7 years ago, February 2019, Hollow Knight Silksong was revealed to the world through a trailer, a sequel originally meant to be DLC for Hollow Knight. Around 2021 or 2022, the game became free for PS Plus users. It was a no-brainer to claim to my library since I've already heard a lot of praise for the game. I never thought how much Hollow Knight would really stick with me. Usually I tend to ignore praise of certain medias because I rather see it for myself, but man, Hollow Knight deserves the glaze it gets. To the music choices, sound direction, art style, story aspects, fun gameplay loop, this game offered me one of the best first playthroughs I have ever had the pleasure of experiencing. I'm the type of person who needs to experience something multiple times to start taking an interest in it, because sometimes I miss out on those interests if I don't have a certain consensus towards it off the bat. There's only been a few medias that have immediately caught my attention off the first encounter. Hollow Knight is a special case for it. Here's the thing, I do not like Metroidvanias at all. I never grew up with them, and the genre has never really found its cross towards me. I'll play shooters, fighting, Souls-like, RPG, racing, sports, every genre. Somehow Metroidvanias always bore me. So my knowledge on them is really subpar compared to other genres. So playing Hollow Knight, it caught me off guard how much it stuck to me. It's not just a Metroidvania, but also has other aspects going for it, like the Souls-like element it has. Let's not kid ourselves, this game definitely takes a page in FromSoft's story structure. Obscure events, item descriptions, environmental clues. I know this type of storytelling and lore building has always been around for a long time, but FromSoft popularized it in the gaming sphere. So I think that's one of the main reasons why I fell in love with Hollow Knight in my first playthrough. Naturally, I was looking forward to Silksong. I wanted more of Hollow Knight. And as we got closer, the hype started to become unreal, especially those last 2 weeks of the upcoming release date. The dude who's been reporting daily Silksong news can finally rest. So, was Silksong worth the wait? Short answer, yes. Overall, the game is good. Long answer, it's complicated. I need to clarify the basis I'm going by for the Silksong critique and deep dive video. I am basing this video off my first playthrough of Silksong. I'll extend a bit more, but the important point for this is Silksong has so much content, to the point I feel like I have gotten my certified opinion from just one save file. I 100% of the game with only a few achievements missing. The missing achievements are just the speedrun achievements and Steel Soul. It took me around 50 plus hours to complete the game blindly for the most part. I did search up some stuff at the end, though it was just to farm certain items for the shops and find 2 charms I missed. So I didn't really spoil myself with anything story-wise or content-wise. This was a blind playthrough beginning to end. The most important point I need to address is the dangers of expectations a person can have towards something. When something you look forward to doesn't meet your taste of quality, it leaves an unsatisfying taste towards the end. I say this because while Silksong did manage to prevent this unsatisfying taste completely at the end, there's still a lack of flavor I wanted to be met that I couldn't find in this game to cover the lack of flavor Hollow Knight had. The main issue this game has, for me anyways, which I need to clarify, this is my opinion, and what I found disappointing about the game won't reflect the consensus of the community. So don't get your panties wet just because I didn't like the same things you did. The main issue Silksong didn't meet for me is Team Cherry failed to fix certain issues Hollow Knight had. Silksong elevates the best aspects of Hollow Knight to the point I am outstanded how they were able to elevate what Hollow Knight did well already. What they also did was descend further to the mistakes Hollow Knight had for me. This video is going to be a critique and deep dive for Silksong, not a criticism. A criticism covers the negative aspects of a subject's substance. A critique is covering every aspect of a subject's substance regardless of quality. To give you a small rundown, I'll be splitting up the video in acts like the game does. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Act 1 and 3 are what I have issues with the game, but Act 2 is more praise if anything. I will also be comparing both Hollow Knight and Silksong because, you know, sequel game. It's only natural I do. Plus it'll help you understand my mindset and how my feelings towards the game came to be. I expect a sequel game to improve every aspect from the previous title, small or big. So yeah, let's get started with my mixed feelings of Silksong. The game starts with a cutscene of our main protagonist, Hornet, captured. Then a Silk Monarch fly closes towards Hornet, which collapses the bridge below her, freeing Hornet, leading to Act 1, Farloom. We wake up in Moss Grotto, our first area. Team Cherry decides to take a familiar approach with Silksong. They want to give a familiarity after almost a decade of Hollow Knight's release, but it's an alternative gameplay direction, if anything. Instead of this dreary cave area with water dripping in the distance, we walk through a more colorful route, setting the tone for Silksong. There are already hints of a more lively civilization Hollowness was devoid from. This is still a Hollow Knight game though, shown with the fact of the secret room off the bat on your right. The room also has another secret room that I missed in my first gameplay. I don't know how I missed that. So the familiarity of the environment and secret rooms the series is known for is still there. But I noticed almost immediately the opposite approach that Silksong was going for. The notice I had was a bigger sign than I initially thought. My notice came in 4 minutes into the game, so pretty quickly. After finishing the game, I failed to understand how much my instinctual notice actually held. The realization was correlated to the healing mechanic. Both games have masks acting as your health bar. Get hit once, you lose 1 mask, maybe 2 depending on the enemy. In Hollow Knight, there are very few enemies that do 2 masks of damage, so when I saw 2 masks being healed instead of 1, I knew this game was going to be harder. I was right, but there's more to it. Confirmed in a recent interview, the premise of Silksong's map layout was to flip the script from Hollow Knight's exploration premise. The night starts at the peak of the map, at the top basically. It's your job to dive deeper into Hollow Nest, slowly into your playthrough. The deeper you go, the more you uncover about the world. A fallen angel route is a good way to describe it. You start at the summit of a barren world long after its peak of its civilization. Then you descend further slowly into the void, calling to you, providing a desperate answer to stop an infection that the King of Hollow Nest failed to prevent. I refer to this as the Fallen Angel route because Team Cherry confirmed creating Silksong's layout by 3 core themes: Heaven, Purgatory, and Hell. Starting at the bottom of Purgatory, or the surface of Hell, depending how you look at it, then slowly making your way through Purgatory to reach Heaven, aka the Citadel. So my instinctual notice was right, just not the right wording at the moment until I finished the game. My brain tends to correlate stuff in the weirdest way. Something slightly reminds me of something, I'll just remember another thing. I don't know, it's just weird. Speaking of instinctual notice, our first boss is Moss Mother, setting up one of the most important key themes of Silksong, which is femininity within Farloom. Besides our protagonist being a woman, the whole game uses feminine ideologies to build up its lore. We saw glimpses of it in Hollow Knight with the distant village in the Deep Nest. We learned a bit of Hornet and her relations between Hollow Nest, the Pale King, and her upbringing. Hornet has 3 mothers: Hera the Beast who birthed her, the White Lady who raised her, and Hive Queen Vespa who trained her. This originally was an idea one of the developers had way before Silksong's release. So at most it was a headcanon people in the community really wanted to see. Thanks to Silksong, the prototype Hollow Knight hinted of Hornet's past ended up being true. Hollow Knight was already playing with the idea of femininity within its lore, but most of it seemed like side lore we had to wait for since all of it tied to Hornet, with some exceptions of course. One of my favorite ideas in Hollow Knight that covered women themes was the Grey Mourner. Her reputation comes from her frustrating quest of delivering the White Flower across Hollow Nest without getting hit. Though her quest has a lot of deep implications about women dealing with grief. The Grey Mourner is a woman unable to properly confront her grief of the passing of her lover, the Traitor Lord's son. She is so distraught of her lover's passing that the Traitor's Child grave and where she resides are at the opposite ends of Hollow Nest, showing a commentary on how women who are perceived as emotional struggle to find the emotions they are known for to deal with grief, short of leaving them in a loop of numb depression regardless how much support they receive from their family and friends. The Grey Mourner follows this principle of widow philosophy. She wants to move on, but she can't bring herself to go see her lover's grave. The player offers as a gateway to deliver the flower she desperately wants to leave so she can find peace. Both the Traitor Child and Grey Mourner can move on peacefully. We only saw themes like these scattered in Hollow Knight. The Moss Mother gives us a confirmation of motherhood being expanded on for the game with its lore, especially since Silksong dives deep to motherhood for Hornet's core character. Actual gameplay wise, it's a very simple boss and a nod to Grandmother in Hollow Knight. It's also to help you get used to the combat since, if you haven't noticed, Hornet's moves are faster, yet there's something missing. Actually, a lot is missing from Hornet if we consider her moveset in Hollow Knight. The first real area after Moss Grotto is the Marrow. The Marrow is a tribute to the Forgotten Crossroads, but it takes its own twist by expanding a lot to it in terms of physical substance, which is expected. After almost 6 years of waiting, 7 in the time of making this video, we would want a lot from the game. You'll notice immediately in the Bone Bottom, the village next to the entrance of the Marrow, Hornet actually talks, which caught me off guard completely. The knight doesn't say a single word in the entirety of Hollow Knight, not even a sound. He just stands there like a husk, just sort of there existing. The knight is not a unique creature. He is one of many homunculus soldiers who have managed to succeed due to being a reflection of the player's actions. The actions of the player symbolize the success of the knight and the other soldiers' failures you can find around the game. If the player fails, they become a dead husk around the map's lore, but if the player strives to accomplish the knight's purpose, they manage to strive above those who have failed below them. So essentially, the knight is the player. Hornet is a nice change of pace for the storytelling of Silksong. She is very talkative towards those she can communicate with, which is a surprise since in Hollow Knight she seems sort of distant towards the player, which left a lot of mystery towards her actual personality. Regardless, we can tell she's a good person at heart with the actions she displayed in Hollow Knight. She actively risked her well-being to end the infection, and in a specific ending, she ends up being sealed with the player and the vessel. So hearing her talk really does give her character a lot of charm, especially with 2025 being such a big year for women lead roles. Silksong Hornet is older than Hollow Knight Hornet, so it makes sense for Hornet to be more mature in this title. She's someone with rational thinking and decision making. Even with being a person, or bug really in this context, who has been raised in royalty, her experiences of being raised by different women in her younger years taught her how to be that kind of noble. Ignoring the fact of later information of her real thoughts of certain creatures, she doesn't think too low of bugs trying to survive in the kingdom during its continuous collapse. She gives her respect towards those who help her along her journey. This is just a small taste of it, which introduces us to the best NPC in the game by a mile. No competition, my son, Sherma. Oh my god. I fucking love Sherma. I was so worried my predictions of Sherma dying in Silksong was gonna come true. $100 they kill her off soon. Or like later. Because if it did, I would have had a, well guys, I guess that's it moment, and blew the top half of my head smooth off. Sherma is indicative hopeful in Silksong about the perception the Citadel is viewed for individual bugs. He is one of many bugs who dream of reaching the Citadel for an answer to fix the cruel mishaps happening in the purgatory sections of Farloom. Many bugs view the Citadel as a definitive solution to disasters plaguing Farloom, but things are never truly what they are as they are perceived to be. Sherma is a special case, besides being one of the first NPCs. He's just playing the instrument in front of this obviously locked gate, hoping the gods will guide him in his journey. This is the starting point towards the Marrow by having us go through this small obstacle. It's very simple, kill a few enemies, some platforming, and it ends with a small lockdown. Most importantly, you'll notice how fast the game introduces 2 max damage. We'll get into this in a bit. Once you clear the small lockdown, we hit a switch to open the gate Sherma was trying to open. Sherma doesn't thank us, but thinks the gate opened because of divine intervention. God, I love him. And Hornet doesn't say much, as in lore, she actually likes cute stuff, so she probably doesn't say much and lets Sherma think the way he does to not break his spirit. Once all that is done, we start our real journey through Act 1, and before we can continue, I need to address one thing about this section that will change the direction of the video the further we go in, because it will tie back to when I cover Act 3. Act 1, from the beginning to up until the earliest at the Widow boss fight, or at least the latest with the judge before the Citadel, was very uninteresting. Which might not seem crazy to some of you at first, but remember, this is a big game. Not just big, it is very large to the point that the $20 price point is very charitable for the price to product ratio, especially this level of quality. So it pains me a lot to say Act 1 was very uninteresting to me. It took me 12 hours to complete Act 1, and for majority of Act 1, the game didn't catch my attention as much as Hollow Knight did. It was more frustrating if anything, because I quickly started to realize none of the issues I had with Hollow Knight were addressed. Team Cherry doubled down on some of the gameplay philosophies I personally do not enjoy for what they are known for. Starting with the Marrow. The Marrow is very basic. Not in a good way, if I'm being honest. Theoretically, the point of interest should be at the end of the Marrow. It's not. The Marrow does stuff well though. It serves as an introduction point to the base mechanics of the game on a surface level. Area seems more trying to lead you to items and interactions intentionally, than to keep you moving forward one after another. One of the first things I discovered was the Shard Pendant, our first look into the charm system. Let's hold it off for just a bit. Outside of the introduction of the game's base mechanics, this area is very empty. I can see why Team Cherry did this. It's to save replay value. But that's my issue with this area. Besides meeting Chakra and the Bell Beast boss fight, this area is a step down from what made the Forgotten Crossroads so great as a first real starter area. What Forgotten Crossroads set up for Hollow Knight was giving this ambient setting for Hollow Knight's world building and sensation for the game. There's nothing initially when you first enter this area. You see a few bugs crawl around, but the game quickly tickles the player's brain with the environment enables around you. The best example for this tickling curiosity of the player's brain is when we first encounter the sealed door containing the vessel. Design wise, it fits well with the ambient dark tone setting the Crossroads have, yet there's something odd about it. It feels like this building isn't supposed to be here. It sticks out very uncanny when design wise it's supposed to be natural to the area. You just can't get this feeling of unnatural curiosity that this building is just there. This is just many examples of the Forgotten Crossroads does right. The Marrow seems kinda lacking of this tickling sensation I got from the Forgotten Crossroads. A lot of the interesting parts only happen with Chakra and the Bell Beast. Chakra is our map provider like Cornifer. Unlike Cornifer, she has more to say than just being a map provider. Her tall stature is one thing that sticks out to her. She comes from a very prideful race of bugs who identify themselves with combat. The value of strength and skill is everything to them. She is in Farloom trying to find her master who went missing exploring the civilization of the continent. Chakra in this game acts a lot like a younger Hornet, believe it or not. in my eyes at least. She can come down as very hard-headed in her culture's beliefs, something we saw a bit with Hornet in Hollow Knight when she was testing the player throughout the game. Chakra's whole journey of finding a new perspective in the game is done very well. Her whole ideology is that strength is the only valor a person needs to find worth in their life. Though the more she explores the harsh conditions of Farloom, she slowly starts to understand that strength comes from different avenues of a bug's characteristics. Some of these areas are beyond reason to live in. Yet Chakra sees certain bugs who put up with it every day because they have hope of things being better or trying to make good of a bad situation. It's a journey of a person who comes from a culture of radical ideologies. One where the culture plants a seed of ignorance to its people because of past events. It's a small commentary of how people from these cultures view other cultures and refuse to acknowledge other culture strengths out of blatant prejudice for their own beliefs. Chakra manages to open up a bit to other bugs in Farloom and aids us by helping the bugs of Belheart of the Void Infection in Act 3. First introductions though, I didn't care for her much until later. The Bell Beast is also a similar situation. I don't have an issue with the boss fight. It's actually pretty challenging for the first time. I have an issue how you reach it, and brings up a problem with one of Team Cherry's decisions on how to start the game. You'll encounter the Bell Beast in an open room. She is trapped in a well of silk. Hitting the silk is not enough, so you have to look for an alternative route to find a way to free it. You do some platforming and come across this collisionist monument. This is our introduction to the skill system for this game. You bind your silk to it, unlocking the silk spear we see in the first Hornet boss fight in Hollow Knight. The first silk ability we get brings up a personal issue I have with the start of the game. Why did we have to start the game with none of these abilities Hornet had in Hollow Knight? Bare minimum, silk spear and the dash. I understand from a gameplay perspective this was probably the only option you can go with initially. Starting with these abilities would seem pretty powerful to the player, but I feel like Team Cherry really limited themselves on how to start the game. I understand the thought process behind it. Start the game with this familiar setting to Hollow Knight beginning area and have these two abilities be the starter abilities you get pretty fast. You can get Silk Spear 5 minutes into the game and dash 15 minutes after if you're quick enough. I was expecting though we should get these two abilities off the bat since Silk Spear was very heavily integrated to Hornet's identity, while dash seems like an ability that should be a part of Hornet's base design. We didn't. I don't understand why completely. All Team Cherry did was limit themselves on how the first area was going to be designed in my eyes. Lore-wise, it doesn't make sense either. Why did Hornet lose her abilities? Did entering Farloom rob her of her abilities because of the Weaver statues, or did the Silk Fly we saw in the cutscene drain it? Imagine how different this area would be if we started with these abilities. The Marrow feels the most disconnected from any other area in Act 1. Besides the one mission of hunting down the mini-boss, how often are you really gonna revisit this area? Let's be honest here, compared to the Forgotten Crossroads, this area doesn't incite me to look around, nor pique my curiosity when once you're done with this main stuff, there's nothing much to do. It's such a far cry to the Forgotten Crossroads when Team Cherry is obviously trying to make that route when starting the game. One big expectation I came in with was more emphasis on the diagonal platforming. This thought process came when I saw the trailer of Silksong with Hornet's down attack. We start off with it, but I was like, there's going to be more focus on aspects of platforming while introducing abilities to excel the platforming. While the platforming is amazing, which I'll cover later on, we didn't get that directly. Instead of discovering the Silk Spear, what if we unlocked a new variant of it, like a diagonal direction towards it? We see areas we can't reach. You can reach it distant-wise, but one missing ability is preventing you from it. Instead of the dash, what if an attachment ability involving the Silk Spear, where it could launch you towards the item you clinged on? Sort of like a grappling hook / zipline. I'll admit we do get later on like the grappling hook, but it's only like, it's kind of weird though. And also this thought process came from like Hollow Knight, where like sometimes like Hornet would, after you defeat Hornet, she would just disappear like off the screen. I thought there was going to be more emphasis on that, but I guess not. Whatever. This is what I mean when Team Cherry limited themselves. The game starts without giving itself an identity properly in my eyes, or at least the first real area of the game. It tries to do everything the Forgotten Crossroad does, yet it feels like a step down. You might say, it's a tutorial area like you said. Yes, it is. It's an extension to the Moss Grotto. If it's an extension to the area, why even let it be its own thing? I'm not saying my ideas should be implemented. One of the hardest things about development is innovation, or really building on top of your previous work. The biggest test to game developers is how, basically, improve on your previous ideas. Team Cherry sort of failed at this with the Marrow. If you're going to use the if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality, don't try to cover it up. Just be straightforward with me. It felt like I was being led on something different is going on with this area, which in some part could be my fault. I'll let you decide on that. It's a shame because I say all this, but this argument could be thrown out with the deep docks. Oh my god, everything wrong with the Marrow is completely the opposite with the deep docks. This should have been the real first area for this game. How is Team Cherry going to show us the deep docks extensively during playtests and trailers, then not use this area as the first area of the game? If any area was to set the identity of Silksong, it should have been the deep docks. Entering the deep docks entices the whole hail concept Team Cherry was going for perfectly. You can feel the wave of heat this area blows to your face upon the first entrance. The trial run is over and you are on your own. Right before I explored this area, I discovered the Hunter March, something I held off until I explored the deep docks. I also decided to return to the village to see if anything new unlocked. We're introduced to the quest chart every village has in this game. They are simple missions. They range from escort, hunting, and donation missions. Most of these missions are very simple in my opinion. The escort missions have you look into someone lost in the areas of Farloom. The hunting missions have you hunt a special enemy or many enemies for materials, and the donation missions just require you to donate some currencies like the tool shards or the red beads. Not all missions give you rewards, but they are required as you can't reach Act 3 nor 100% the game without completing all the missions. The rewards range from more materials, abilities, and upgrades. These missions are repetitive and simple, but only a small handful are really required to full focus, as the game makes it pretty obvious you should be doing these missions as you go, with the deep docks using the mission foundation for your exploration here. This is why I said the deep docks should have been the first area. Yes, the very first missions are oriented around the marrow, yet they are very simple and bare-boned. No pun intended. The platforming is a very big step up and is more reminiscent of the Forgotten Crossroads and Green Path combined. I just love the whole atmosphere going on for this place and most enemy variety. There's a lot of room to test the combat more efficiently and get that feel of how the platforming direction will go. Pogoing is more encouraged from the enemies than environmental objects than in Hollow Knight. They throw a few small challenges for you to use enemies to reach certain areas and have you test the water of the aerial combat with flying enemies. It doesn't feel like it's throwing enemies at you for the sake of difficulty, for now. You meet the Forge Daughter after clearing the lockdown. We see the tool system being extended with her selling new tools to use, and I actually figured out how to use them here. It took me a good minute to figure out what this section of the inventory was. This is Silksong's charm system from the previous game. I'm sorry to say this about the new charm system, but I hate this with a passion. I hate it. I hate it to the point I think this ruined certain aspects of my playthrough. In Hollow Knight, they had passive buffs called charms. You could equip charms to give you an effect to help you in your journey, ranging from more health, soul, range, speed, or damage increase in your moveset. You start the game with 3 charm notches. Each charm has a notch requirement, and usually the more powerful ones have a higher cost. You can find up to 8 charm notches, totaling 11 charm notches in total, and the game has 45 charms to find. While I do like the system, it is apparent one flaw the system has: power creep. A lot of the charms in Hollow Knight do the same thing. The famous example is the Long Nail and Mark of Pride charm. Both offer extended range to your nail, but the Mark of Pride charm offers more range, so most likely you would trade this out once you find it. This is just one of many examples. The Lifeblood charms, Soul Increaser charms, Focus charms, etc, etc. The power creep doesn't come from finding a better version of the charms, it also comes from charm abilities and notch cost. You see, Team Cherry had very weird decisions on how to balance their charms. Balance is a generous understatement though. It probably came from one of their charms receiving the most nerfs in the game's history, which was Fluke Nest. There's a video that covers the history of this charm, but to shorten it down, basically Fluke Nest is a charm that would convert your Vengeful Spirit Soul Blast spell into a spell launching fluke bugs to the enemies at the cost of your range. Basically like a shotgun blast. But when this game came out, this charm was broken. This charm does increase your overall DPS if you land all the fluke bugs. Before the nerfs though, the DPS output was night and day compared to anything it is now. Each fluke did 4 to 5 damage and the max damage was 144. To put it to reference, the nail fully upgraded with charms only did 60 damage. The Fluke Nest without any charm support was doing double damage basically. Imagine the DPS output with charms like Shaman Stone or Spell Twister, both charms that help with DPS output of spells. But this wasn't the only reason why it got nerfed. It was also causing weird bugs like duplicating enemies and breaking boss fights. So by the time DLC content and after came around, it received multiple nerfs. Though the charm is still viable, it's just a far cry from its former self. It was probably charms like these where Team Cherry really hesitated to increase the effectiveness of certain charms in the game out of fear of another Fluke Nest dilemma. Charms like Hive Blood or Carefree Melody in theory should be part of your core roster. Once you actually see the numbers and test out the effectiveness, you wonder why they cost this much. Hive Blood takes 10 seconds to regenerate your recent max damage with some hidden caveats. It can only regenerate your recent max damage, not the one right after. So if you take 2 masks of damage, you can only heal 1 mask passively. And if you take another hit before the 10 seconds are up, the regeneration resets without carrying forward the regeneration process. This charm costs 4 notches. You have to build around this charm to get its full effectiveness. I would understand if it was 2, maybe 3 notches. 4 though? That's asking for too much. You might say, what about the charm combinations? there is a charm that removes the 1 mask healing restriction for Hive Blood called Joni's Blessing. It has the ability to increase your mask capacity by 40%. The trade-off is that you can't heal your mask until you sit down on a bench. When combined with Hive Blood, it removes the 1 mask regeneration and heal restrictions of both charms. The combination costs 8 notches. 8 fucking notches. You want to hear something funny? The 10-second regeneration? It's gone. Also good, right? It's 20 seconds. Why? Just why? This takes up majority of your notch space, leaving you with just 1 charm space at most. If that's the case, why not just use Quick Focus by itself? Or if being hit consistently is your issue, why not use Balder Shell or Carefree Melody? Better yet, just use Sharp Shadow, a charm buffing your Shadow Dash by increases the Shadow Dash range, which gives you more invincibility frames as an extra buff directly. Your dash regenerates faster, and all those things I just described aren't even its main effect. The main effect is giving your Shadow Dash a hitbox, damaging enemies anytime you dash through them, equivalent to 1 nail hit. This charm costs 2 notches. 2 notches! I try to see the design philosophy Team Cherry had with the charm system. It's obvious certain charms, if not all, are meant to be combined with one another. And there's a progress system behind it with early game charms and late game charms. Having cheaper early game charms helps you fit any effects you want if you don't want the notch cost for the better version. The overcharm system also helps you more by fitting more expensive charms at the cost of double damage, so if you're the average Billy Chinese speedrunner for Hollow Knight, it's worth being overcharmed to fully utilize the charm system. I can ignore the awful design decisions behind Hollow Knight's charm system because of these reasons. It never really affected the builds I liked. More specifically, nail combat. But that's the issue. Experimentation is punished just because of how weak a lot of these charms are. Especially the charms that have unique effects like Dream Shield, Grim Child, Glowing Womb, or Weaver Song. All these charms have a nice gimmick going for it, yet they are held back by cost. If not cost, the ability is too weak to use and you're better off using the better charms. This is where power creep comes from in my opinion. When you decide to nerf charms with interesting ideas out of fear the effect might break the game literally, or making the game too easy, it makes power creep worse than already intended. Certain early game charms become too enticing not to remove. You actively make the player choose not to use certain charms and never remove the ones with no drawbacks because they are simply the better option to never remove. Why would I remove charms like Sharp Shadow, Unbreakable Strength, and Quick Slash if they offer more DPS than the unique ones offer? Plus, unique charms cover niche situations and playstyles other stronger charms cover indirectly, either by stopping the scenario before it happens, or just getting better at the game overall. I wanted Team Cherry to overhaul the system for the better by paying attention to the community's consensus of charms needing buffs in Hollow Knight, or keeping the basis of the charm system while improving on it. All Silksong did was restructure the charm system and somehow making it worse. I officially noticed this in Act 2, but I need to cover this now since this ties back to Act 3 of the video, and Act 2 will be all praise. And this is the only time I'm going to touch the tool/charm decisions directly for this video because thinking about it frustrates me heavily since it correlates to another issue relating to Act 3. Silksong's charm system gets rid of the notch mechanic and restructures it to a colored system. You have red, blue, and yellow notches where specific tools/charms fall under. You unlock the color notches by collecting memory lockets scattered around the map. Like I said earlier, the Sharp Pendant will be the first tool you find. You'll notice the recurring theme with the tools. Red tools are actually tools you have to directly interact with, blue tools are more combat oriented passively, and yellow tools are passive tools helping you with exploration, with a few helping in combat. This game really wants you to use red tools the most. You're going to find more red tools than any other naturally. Both red and blue notches have around the same amount of tools, around 20 plus-ish, with yellow having less than 20. The mechanic of charm combinations is still there, with some familiar charms from Hollow Knight being in this game. You are allowed to have multiple of the same color tools depending on the crest you choose. The tool combination system seems to be Team Cherry's answer to fix the charm system, and oh boy, how they failed badly, in my opinion at least. The ability to use multiple of the same color tools seems broken at first, until you realize that this is just a regular charm system with more charm notches with even heavier restrictions towards certain tools. The issue isn't just the same problems with the charm system. It is the main reason, but it's not the only reason. It's the fact that the tool system gives an illusion of these problems being fixed, and the pushiness towards the red tools the most. All the crests besides the shaman offer at least one red tool pouch. Believe it or not, the blue tools have the most notches, and there's only 3 tools in the game that buff red tools directly. Naturally, you would presume there's more emphasis on tool combinations when we go further into the game. We're looking at this the wrong angle. Silksong is hiding the problems at face value. Once you start comparing tools and charms from Hollow Knight, you start to see it from my angle. The tools that buff red tools are Quick Sling and Polyp Pouch, both blue tools, which Sling doubles the amount of tools and Polyp Pouch applies poison to red tools. Wait, I just said there's 3. Shell Satchel is a yellow tool increasing the red tool's capacity. It's exclusive to Steel Soul, so we're going to put it aside for now. These two tools buff the entirety of your red tools roster significantly, and they aren't even a part of the red tool section, which creates problems. First, most of the crests with heavy blue or yellow notches have heavy combinations with the red notches regardless of the fact of blue having the most notches combined. That's without considering the one extra notch you get later in the game for both the blue and yellow tools outside of the crest you pick. Second, the game in Act 1 and first half of Act 2 throws so many shell shards your way. You have an abundance of them because the game definitely wants you to use them. Thirdly, the red tools, while being high in numbers, are all very similar. You see the issue. We're back at step 1 of having the series making the same mistakes again. Straight pin, long pin, and threefold pin are all the same tools with minor differences and stats. So naturally you just use the better one, regardless if they shine in different situations, because you'll just use the one that does more damage. Same goes for tools like Sickle, Chakra Ring, and Conch Cutter. Yet there are significantly weaker tools compared to Tax and Cogfly, both tools that significantly outperform the rest of the red tool category due to the numbers you can throw out at the same time. Yeah, they might not do damage with just one projectile, but the damage adds up out of a number variety they offer. And that gap increases with both Polyp Pouch and Quick Sling. Flea Brew, Flint Slate, Volt Vessel are fun to use a lot. Flea Brew and Flint Slate are victims of Team Cherry's mentality of heavily nerfing tools / charms. They only last for a few seconds, which in my opinion is very short. I would happily trade in the amount of use for a longer effect. It's just kind of repetitive having to activate them the whole time because they have such powerful effects, and Team Cherry wanted to sort of bring a heavy, annoying backdraw to them. A 50% increase in damage and speed is very strong, don't get me wrong, but the effect only lasts for 8 seconds for 3 activations, so just 24 seconds in total. I feel like this is just unnecessary condition for these tools, but I think I know why it's like this that I'll cover in Act 3, so just hold on until then. Volt Vessel is fun to use, so I don't have many complaints about it. These 3 tools are the most fun to use to me honestly, and it doesn't break the flow of combat. The blue and yellow tools are the real victims of Team Cherry's old habits. I won't lie, it isn't as bad as it was in Hollow Knight. The power creep is still there regardless. I wonder if it's because of the multiple color notches being the reason to fix the issue. I question if that's the real reason why these tools still feel very weak, since Team Cherry wants you to synergize them with each other along with being able to use the same color tools depending on the crest. You might say yes, until you realize some of these tools are so useless or get power crept. Witchfire Lantern, Egophilia, Pin Badge, Druid's Eye, Magma Bell, Memory Crystal, Snitch Pick, Wrath of Purity, Deadbug's Purse, Scuttle Brace, Ascending Grip, and Silkspeak Anklet are either situational or the effectiveness is minuscule. Then we have certain tools that outclass the other tools. Warning Bell, Multi-Binder, and Fractured Mask are essentially in the same field of mask preservation, though the Injector Band outclasses them with the ability to speed up your heals without any drawback. Magma Bell and Wrath of Purity, I question why they even belong in the blue tool section, considering their abilities hardly help with combat and seem more like tools fitted more to the yellow section with their abilities to help in world navigation. And then there's a tool that sticks out like an elephant in the yellow section, causing me to even dedicate a section to this video. I wanted to keep in hope of the tool system being better after seeing the first red tools introduced to us. That hope was shattered upon discovering the Barb Bracelet in Act 2. Found in Sinner's Road, I was happy seeing one of my favorite charms back from Hollow Knight. Hold up though. Do you see that? Increased damage taken. Surely in a game where 90% of the enemies do double damage, they wouldn't... At least the 50% damage increase. You see why I hate this system. The Barb Bracelet was a loud paradigm to Team Cherry's design decisions for the tool system. It also alludes to certain after effects in Silksong as I saw in Act 3 of the game. Until we reach that point, it doesn't affect us for now. I wanted to talk about how Barb Bracelet sets a specific message to how tools work in this game. It seems like instead of buffing effects directly for charms, Team Cherry used combinations to strengthen them. In theory, this should work. You use tools to connect effects together to create one ability to your roster or create a chain of effects in general. The crests also work with the system, but again, Act 3, so hold on until then. If this is the case for the tool system, explain to me why the majority of the combinations are more synergized to the red tools if anything. There are rarely any combinations between blue and yellow tools. Majority of combinations are more catered towards red tools, even though there are only 2 blue tools that directly buff red tools, along with the crest having you push towards red tools the most. It seems to me Team Cherry was scared to have the tool combinations get out of hand, and there was probably a lot of hesitation once they saw how powerful the red tools were, combined with Polyp Pouch and Quick Sling. This worrisome of having to balance a new set of tools combinations like in Hollow Knight at release in Silksong's roster probably led to Team Cherry continuing their philosophy of having charms be at a balanced state and tried to balance the tool system much more restrictive as they could to have an even playing field between all of them. But Team Cherry, to me, failed to see they were repeating the same actions again, whether directly in the tool department of Silksong and indirectly in other gameplay aspects that set the tone for the game. The barb bracelet was the point of realization I was desperately trying to cope with upon discovering the red tools in the deep docks. Team Cherry was willing to set a line no tool was ever to cross. If it did cross that line, it would get nerfed quickly, deserved or not. There's more I'll cover later, but to move on, I'll wrap up my point. The treatment Unbreakable Strength got through barb bracelet complexes me so much. I would understand taking 4 massive damage in a game where 80, if not 90% of enemies do 2 massive damage for a 50% damage increase. Team Cherry decides to bring in the full nerf hammer by nerfing it to 25%. All fine and dandy until you realize a few things. The damage increase is to the nail only, like in Hollow Knight. Why is this an issue? Volt Filament exists. It buffs your silk abilities for 25% and has a lingering effect for more damage. The catch? None. You take 2 massive damage in this game, by the way, from most enemies. Volt Filament can get away with this because of a specific condition Barb Bracelet also is restricted to. Flintblade 3 use limit is negated by a specific crest in the game along with every red tool, and tools that offer alternative paths in the same category of effects are outclassed by better choices. What's the point I'm trying to make? I just don't like the system, at all, regardless of the defense points people could make. The game wants you to use these tool combinations, yet it's heavily favored towards the red tools the most, leading to the game not having many synergies for the blue and yellow tools categories, yet still getting the hard balance philosophies Team Cherry wants, where every tool can't surpass a line in their eyes. Team Cherry basically says, use this synergy system we had in Hollow Knight, now revamped, but only the ones we have available for red tools, as there's a lack of other tool combinations between blue and yellow tools, and experimentation is heavily restricted outside of those conditions. At least with the power creep Hollow Knight had with its charms, the game will let you combine the charms you wanted, and it was all viable to your playstyle. Whether you had a nail build, spell build, or a custom build, it was viable with some experimentation with the right charms. It's obvious Team Cherry was determined to continue the charm synergy system, but have it all tied to the red tools, putting us back to square one as now the tools with no drawbacks, with powerful effects, are still luring around the series, making certain tools permanent to your build if there's no other way to fit them to other playstyles you might want to try. It's stricter to the actual tools than the amount you can put on essentially. Team Cherry's fixation on the balancing of the charm system brought them back full circle in their past mistakes with a new coat of paint behind it. I've been on this point long enough, and my point is I don't personally like the route they took essentially. I just wanted to get this out of the way since I didn't want to bring it up in Act 2, and it's obvious I want to talk about the system the most, being the most anticipated mechanic I was looking forward to. Now that it's out of the way, we can keep going. Sorry for the long hold up. Trying to distract myself from the tool system during this moment, I kept exploring and I started to see glimpses of the Forgotten Crossroads the further I kept discovering the deep docks. It's not all just lava in this area. The Forgotten Crossroads sees a lot of areas connected to it, acting as a prime hub area for certain places that surround it. Green Path and Crystal Cove are areas teased to us in Forgotten Crossroads, but you can't access these areas without some form of upgrade. The Deep Docks does the same here. I decided to skip the Hunter's March as I thought I wasn't supposed to be in this area yet. My decision was sort of right in the moment. Deep Docks, Far Fields, and Hunter's March have a unique connectivity to each other that Forgotten Crossroads, Green Path, and Crystal Cove had in the beginning of Hollow Knight. Silksong decides to expand on this connectivity more. In Hollow Knight, you gain access to unlock the Spirit Blast ability after defeating False Knight to access Green Path. There's a mob who hides in his shell when you get close, so the Spirit Blast helps you bypass him and gain access to it. Instead of being blocked by an enemy, the platforms are teasing you about the distance. You can see areas just barely out of your reach. You can try to get away with this by using pogoing on enemies to clear some distance, but it won't get you far. The extra distance is needed in the long run. That's where the dash comes in. Even though it should have been in the start to begin with, I digress. On my way to the dash, I saw how Team Cherry really upped their game when it came to area flourishment between each other. The dash resides close to the top right of the deep docks. We get away from the hell-like pools of lava below the deep docks to a more greenier part of the deep docks you wouldn't expect. This greenery actually comes from the far fields on the right and the Hunter's March on the top. The areas are sort of bleeding into the deep docks. You have the greenery taking over small parts of the deep docks while trying to flow into the small lava rock surrounding areas and mobs. You also have Hunter's March ants laying around, which is a bit odd since you learn a bit about the lore of the area, but it refers to the current state Farloom is in as a civilization collapsing in real time. The deeper we go into the game, the more civilizations of Farlooms collapse with the Hunter's March. Unlocking the dash gives you 3 options to go with: enter Hunter's March, enter Farfield, or continue with the Deep Docks. I do believe continue with the Deep Docks was the smarter option here, so we can continue back down and I'm able to reach the switch I couldn't earlier without the dash. Lace waits for you behind the lock gate. She is a recurring boss throughout the game. You're gonna meet her in every act without fail as the progress bar to your journey. I do believe you are meant to meet her at the beginning of the game. There's a route to skip her boss fight, but you're gonna meet her regardless of the route you take, so I do think you miss out a lot if you avoid her. Lace refers to you as a lost spider out of its cage, wandering around in unfamiliar areas, which matches up to Hornet's current situation. The unsureness whether Hornet was forced into Farloom or was traveling to Farloom is still up to debate. The cage scene could be an argument for the forced argument, though Hornet is a capable fighter in her own right, comparable to the pure vessel if you want to argue she won in the ending scene where they confront each other. That's if they fought, to be fair. The lost comment is more to a nod to Hornet stepping into the unfamiliarity of Farloom where she is supposedly originated, more specifically her silk abilities. The main reason people speculate why she was captured. The origin of her family is under and at the peak of Farloom. Hornet is like every other bug in these current levels of Farloom. The difference is, the calling of Grandmother Silk is forcefully dragging her in. But in some sense, Hornet is instinctively making her way towards the Citadel, while using the excuse to help Farloom as a way to distract herself from the eventual truth she will see. Lace is a literal extension of Grandmother Silk. She does not resemble a real-life bug of any kind, she's purely made out of silk from the grandmother. The closest thing I could find to a real-life counterpart is a special type of ant/spider who imbues himself in silk. I saw that, I researched it, I forgot to pin it down, but I forgot what it was called, but it's like I think it's an ant, specifically like an all-white ant, maybe like a spider, I don't know. You have Hornet, who undoubtedly has an unnatural ability to resonate with silk down to the soul of an individual, and Lace, who is silk itself. The two are tied to each other, almost like long-lost sisters, both tied to the fate of the silk grandmother has them woven into. Lace also stands beside Hornet in the layers of purgatory. She is just above hell she will be dragged into with Hornet, and below the Citadel, sort of watching over us as we keep making our way up. So I do believe you are definitely meant to fight Lace here, as the setting is the best for its first confrontation. I also believe this boss is supposed to be really easy. I first tried this. I know it's still early game, but they really toned down the speed for this confrontation compared to the other two. This is the first boss officially presenting how boss movesets work in Silksong compared to Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight bosses follow this pattern-based moveset in their fights. Read in between the lines and figure out ways to maximize damage while knowing when to back off when the situation requires you to. Obviously, the try-hard Billy players know how to no-hit kill the boss in 30 seconds. Let's be real, 95% of us aren't doing that. Let's take a boss like Fell Knight in Hollow Knight. He becomes the first boss to show you how important it is to read in between movesets, while giving fair leisure way to make some mistakes. The best move that shows this read in between the line approach is after you manage to stun him, he gets up and throws a fit with his hammer. You might be inclined to sort of weave around this hammer. The game expects this thought process from you and shuts it down by having the area introduce boulders coming in from the ceiling to keep you on your toes. Your decisions now really lie between your mask count and your abilities as a player. If you're down a couple masks, you want to step back and heal if you have the soul for it. If you have enough masks, you want to deal more damage to get a head start towards in the next stun phase. The boulders become either your friend or enemy for this move. Healing is risky even with some distance between you and the boss, though the boulders patterns aren't really that random. I noticed 1 or 2 boulders spawn above you from where you're standing. If you can predict the first one, you can dodge it and have enough time for 2 masks worth of heal. Better yet, you can hit the boulders away from you to the boss for extra damage if you don't need the heals. Hollow Knight builds its bosses with this design principle, and you have to decide your actions based on the opening you get. A lot of the bosses become really easy when you figure out how they really work. Team Cherry always found ways to sort of play around these rules. Watcher Knights have simple movesets, but the difficulty comes from trying to keep track of the multiple knights that can spawn. Managing their numbers is important to this fight since you can get overwhelmed quickly, losing track of their position and distance. This is especially true with late game bosses. A simpler approach to build on endgame bosses' movesets was to simply make them faster like Nightmare Grim. He is faster than his base form and keeps you on your toes with attacks coming non-stop, so healing or attacking in between his movesets is important to capitalize from, since hesitation to do so can cost you your run. Then you have bosses having movesets that are a bit awkward to work with, involving directly how their moves work, or some factors playing into their kits, resulting in some various levels of success. Honestly, I think it's stupid how some of these bosses' difficulty literally came from cheese. Sage Master Sly is probably the boss that gave me the most trouble with this design. He not only attacks and moves faster than majority of bosses, but the difficulty comes a lot with how windows become tighter because of how awkward the positioning can seem. His spinning move seems to slightly track you, so it's always a bit weird to dodge it with your dash, since sometimes you can't tell if you'll make the invincibility window. This move becomes extra dangerous with Sly zipping across the arena, and the spinning move now straight up follows you, staying close to you to the walls becomes a dangerous precaution than a safe haven, with the moveset allowing him to fly. For the most part, even with bosses with unique moves or conditions given to them to try to spice things up, you could tell there's only so much Team Cherry could do with this limitation Hollow Knight had to follow. So I was really surprised how well Lace sets up Silksong bosses, groundwork, and now I believe the slow movement was intentional from Team Cherry. Attacks have a lot of room to work with. We see a lot of diagonally leaning patterns with Lace, like the swipe up needle attack. Attacks also seem to chain together more. Hollow Knight bosses had moves where swings would be big charge up attacks. Each attack felt very heavy, especially needle based attacks from bosses. Flurry attacks were kind of a throw off for me, seeing them being introduced here. You need to avoid them effectively. One attack from the flurry will be the same amount of damage as the start of one, which is 2 massive damage, let's not kid ourselves. One thing I can really compliment well from what Silksong improved from Hollow Knight was the overall feel of the controls. I don't know about you, but for some reason, sometimes Hollow Knight would input controls really late. You notice this more with the poke wing. At least this is what it felt on the PS5 version, which is baffling because the game is meant to be played on controller even though it originally came out on PC. I used my PS5 controller for Silksong, even though I played on my PC, and the whole way it felt buttery smooth. Lace really helped me notice this early into my playthrough. Silksong combat leads more into using the air to your advantage. I didn't notice until the end of Act 1 that you can actually heal in the air, which really opens up the possibility windows to angles you can use for your next course of action. You'll also notice Lace sort of chaining attacks together while also reading into your attacks. She won't wait for you to punish. Once she is finished with her attacks, she'll either start the next attack or take the defense depending on your action. You're sort of insinuative to punish attacks more swiftly in between her moveset. Your dash is either meant to create distance or close in on her during those in-between punish windows. Her parry flurry attacks really demonstrate that the best during those situations by dashing away for a heal or dashing behind her for an early punish window. Her second phase tries to cut off your air mobility with these planted air attacks she can place. As long as you aren't directly in the middle of it, you can avoid it. After defeating Lace and discovering what I could of Deep Docks, I made my way towards Far Fields. You can definitely see the inspiration of Green Path here. Yet, unlike Hollow Knight, the area doesn't limit itself visually, nor lore-wise, to try to exclude itself from other areas surrounding it. Hollow Knight areas, because of its lore, never connected together in terms of visual features. Due to the infection, Hollow Knight civilizations block themselves off, so you wouldn't see bugs from City of Tears be in Royal Waterways, and vice versa. Depending on certain things, it depends, but you didn't see that much of it. This is due to the narrative Hollow Knight had for its lore of a collapsed kingdom. Silksong can now upgrade its area design in a visual level with areas being next to each other. The lower parts of Farfields bring something Hollow Knight limited itself when it came to mob and area sharing capabilities. Some areas did do it, like the Edge and the Hive, but it was pretty limited to only having the bee bugs hanging around in a corner of Kingdom's Edge. Farfield to Deep Docks connectivity helps break this limitation a lot. It's also the most memorable part of Act 1 for me. The hellscape of Deep Docks don't just stay in Deep Docks. It follows Farfield considering they're at the same elevation level. Silksong uses this to expand on the quest system. On the lower parts of Farfield, you pass a deactivated robot and are blocked off from returning when leaving the area. There isn't a way up once you're down here. Soon after, you can find a hut with a seamstress waiting inside. She gives you a quest to collect materials for an upgrade. This is one of 3 quests that stick out to me in the game. It's a very simple quest to collect materials, but this small area lets you have a better feel to Silksong's platforming and combat. I will be honest, I was kinda stuck here for a few minutes, longer than I like to admit. I didn't know you were supposed to destroy the projectiles the spiky bugs shoot at you, so I spent a while here. It was nice just getting a feel of the area and how Team Cherry connects Deep Docks and Farfields by having the lava spewing from the previous area, trapping you down here. This is the main reason why Deep Docks should have been the first real area of the game. The quest uses a simple material collection mission to have the player explore this small area thoroughly. At least I did anyways. Yeah, you can get this quest done quickly in under a minute, yet you could tell this bottom area of Farfields is catered for this quest. You can't leave, and you have these wing geysers teasing you the whole time. Plus, it's also beneficial for you to explore the whole area for potential rosaries, since this game drains so much of it for upgrades. So the game is messaging to the player not to skip these quests and to do them along your way, which I was going to do for my first playthrough anyways. Some of the quest rewards are very lackluster, like shard bundles, but you might not know if an important upgrade is behind a simple quest or not. Forgo the club upgrade given to you here. An answer to use the air geysers to escape with a boss waiting for you before you can truly escape back to your journey into Farloom. Fourth chorus blocks your way and gives off this Cuphead-like design to him. Is it just me? The moment he did this first attack, I was like, Cuphead reference? I might be overthinking it here. You see how well the cloak expands your air capabilities with the fourth chorus breaking the platform regularly. The game has you use the cloak to keep up airtime and use it to your advantage, as you now have the ability to heal in the air, so finding openings in the air helps you keep up your mass count. If you're extra careful to your surroundings, you'll notice large boulders you can knock down using the geysers to reach it, so you can end the fight faster. Didn't even notice this until I saw someone online post it. Once gaining access to the cloak, I just explored what I could of far fields and found my way to Greymoor. For an area with a calm aesthetic soundtrack with rain constantly pouring your ears in the background, it's one of those areas I feel like would stick to you instantly. This area gives a City of Tears moment in terms of a visual design approach. I thought I was going to get my hooking point here like I did with City of Tears. I ended up hating this place a lot. It's not with the actual area content entirely, it's more of a sense that Team Cherry has had a bad habit of being firm at one thing when playing either Hollow Knight and Silksong. Each time you play either game, Team Cherry wants you to have a set forced pathway you must follow when playing their games, whether literally or not. What do I mean by this? It's sort of hard to explain, but I'll try my best. One of the best aspects of Hollow Knight is right after you obtain the dash and Mantis Claw, the game opens up more to you with multiple routes to take. Most people are going to make their way into continuing City of Tears or trying to continue with old areas. If you're ballsy, you can tackle Deep Nest or Ancient Bastion early. Basically, Hollow Knight did restrict certain areas without upgrades, but never truly punished you if you decided to explore areas in advance by using a trick to get there. That doesn't mean there hasn't been attempts to stop it. This is more apparent in the speedrunning community of the game. If you're unfamiliar with the speedrunning parts of Hollow Knight, it has had its fair history with Team Cherry trying to slow down speedrunners using odd patch note decisions. The best example I can think of is Explosion Pogo Skip. Explosion Pogo is a skip to reach an ability, Mantis Claw, early. An ability letting you to wall jump. It's required to beat the game and reach the City of Tears area right after the Fungal Waste where Mantis Claw resides. Usually you would have to go all the way around on the right side of the area to reach it, but this skip saves so many minutes off a run. How the skip would work is you would lead an explosive projectile spit by an enemy to the bottom of the room and lead it towards the ledge where Mantis Claw is. Then once getting the right angle, you would pogo bounce from the ball and pogo off the explosion hitbox, dashing afterwards, letting you reach Mantis Claw early. This trick existed when the game came out. After a couple of years of the game's lifecycle, they removed the explosion hitbox, so pogo bouncing was not possible. Speedrunners, being speedrunners, didn't give up on this skip. It's one of the best skips in the game, so they tried to find alternative approaches to it with multiple results. You could use 2 Spirit Blasts for the skip. One stalls your height in the air, dash, use another blast on the left wall, then pogo and dash. You could lead the projectile at the right angle close to the ceiling, use the purple mushroom to maximize your height, then dash and pogo while avoiding the ceiling just narrowly. If the 2 Spirit Blast method feels restrictive, you could drop from the ledge, use 1 blast to stall, dash, then use 2 instead of 1 blast to wait for the projectile. Speedrunners are so desperate to make this skip viable, they would purposely drop their frames to make the projectile last longer in the air to use. This is one of many tricks in the game that has had the Team Cherry patch hammer on it. Another trick that had an unnecessary patch, in my opinion, compared to the explosion pogo, is the open menu trick where you open your menu when you drop from a ledge to increase the falling speed. Team Cherry for some reason thought this trick was broken and made it hard to pull off in later patches by making it where you can't bring up the menu mid-fall, but I'll get back to this point in a bit. To me, it seems like Team Cherry does not like these tricks being in the game, but realized how big the speedrunning community for Hollow Knight was growing, so they hesitated not to fully patch these skips completely. Also, they had a Discord dedicated to speedrunning as well. I just wanted to include that as well. For this reason, people gave Team Cherry the benefit of the doubt since these tricks were still possible, just harder to execute. Maybe there's a reason to patch out these tricks we didn't realize. Well, there was for the menu glitch, but I'll get to that in a bit because I didn't add it to the script, but I'm gonna add it here because it still doesn't change what I say. Maybe there was a reason to patch these tricks we didn't realize. Maybe the explosion hitbox for the projectile was affecting other areas. Maybe the menu opening caused weird visual effects we couldn't see. Maybe it's a reason we don't know fully. Still, I feel like Team Cherry patching these tricks was indicative to how they wanted their players to approach the game no matter the replay value. So even if your first time playing or 1000th time playing, they might want you to play the game a specific way each time with a handful of tricks they approve of. You might say, I think you're blowing this out of proportion. That's what I thought until I reached Greymoor in Silksong. The reason why I hate Greymoor, with it being my least favorite area of this game, is because I got punished heavily for reaching a room early without proper upgrades. I made my way through Greymoor and reached the lounge area. On the top of the lounge area is these bird creatures. Keep these in mind. I cleared the boss near the entrance of Belhart, and before I continued towards Shellwood, I wanted to keep exploring Greymore for anything I might have missed. Coming back to the lounge, there is a ledge on the top right of the building you cannot reach. I was planning on ignoring this until I was fighting the bird enemies on top of the building, and poking off them flipped an idea to reach the ledge. Why don't I use the birds to reach the ledge? So for 15 minutes straight, I tried using the birds and eventually succeeded. From my presumption, it felt like Team Cherry knew what they were doing, including these birds here. That presumption came back to bite me very hard. In a couple rooms ahead, a bridge with a switch activation was in my path. Naturally, I activated it upon coming in contact. Team Cherry will remember this was suddenly looming in the background of my disastrous decision. Still, I proceeded without any possible consequence my action just caused. Until I died. No worries, reaching it was simple enough. Surely, I'll be able to reach the same position and the bridge is gone. The gap between both ledges was too great to reach. Even with the running head start and using the cloak glider, the gap was so far out of reach regardless what I did. I remember spending an hour trying to find alternative ways, yet it felt like conveniently every path was blocked off from reaching this place when the bridge was removed. It felt so intentional this was the case. The fact that once you lower the bridge and die in this area, you lose access to it until you get more upgrades is so odd because the game goes out of its way to cut you off from any access point to this room, at least to the other side where the bridge is to use the bounce pad leading to higher elevation. I was frustrated not because I lost 800 rosaries. Actually, it was the main reason, I'm not gonna lie. I was more frustrated with the fact that if you're gonna do skips like I was trying to do, it needs Team Cherry approval of what's allowed to be skipped. The bar is so confusing when it comes to it. There are two ways to reach Act 2, either through the Judge in Blasted Steps or the Phantom in the exhaust organ area of Biowater. Speedrunners picked the Phantom because you were able to skip getting the cloak and the requirements were just 500 rosaries to enter Wormways. The reason why this was the most favored is because in the Underworks, there was a specific angle in a specific room you could wall jump from and not need the cloak the game needed you to have, saving you 2 minutes in time. It is so bizarre Team Cherry patched this. Let's be real, this trick is only useful for speedrunning. Not getting the cloak nerfs your mobility potential, and the cloak is needed to 100% the game. Okay, it's not the cloak itself that you need for 100% game, it's the quest behind it. But still, it's still part of it regardless, it doesn't matter. You're not doing anything game breaking by skipping the cloak ability, yet Team Cherry thinks in their mind it somehow is. I'm not trying to tell Team Cherry how to fix their game at all. There's probably a deeper reason why specific strats like these are patched, and they do a very good job fixing actual game breaking bugs like duplicate bugs or bugs that soft lock your progress. But let's not kid ourselves here. They very much love to pay attention to speedruns as a way to find issues large or minuscule where they don't even affect 99% of the casual person's playthrough. So they are now doubling down on how they want runs to go every time a player boots up their game regardless of skill gap. This action speaks volume when you have both game speedrunning categories be split by patch notes. Games having split categories is normal, even games being split by certain patch notes. It's just not common by patch notes. Hollow Knight and now Silksong have such a split community when it comes to speedruns involving beating the full game because do you want to play on the latest patch or any previous patches you might enjoy? Silksong is following the same steps because of one wall jump being removed, sending a message from Team Cherry about their game design philosophy. But nothing has confirmed this more than with Hollow Knight Refreshed. A new update to Hollow Knight improving on the mechanics, sharpened controls, and multiple quality of life changes. Team Cherry just couldn't keep their bad habits away. Back to the drop down menu glitch, it got patched by making it where opening your menu pauses your game. Why? There was nothing game breaking about these two bugs and only speedrunners could fully utilize it. The menu glitch is so odd to patch as well. You can't switch charms unless you're on a bench and the only real usefulness this has is checking your charms mid-fight, but you're almost going to be having the same charms equipped majority of the time. Also, I understand that this was patched because of the God mode glitch that was happening a lot and caused inflated numbers on Pantheon 5 on the PS5 version. But still, they couldn't have found a better way to patch this. They could have just tried to patch the God mode itself and not the actual drop down menu glitch. Because the drop down menu glitch, you're not going to be using it. Let's be honest here. Only speedrunners are going to be using it. It's questionable decisions like these and my haunting mistake of reaching an area I wasn't supposed to be at reinforced in my mind. Team Cherry wants you to keep you in a railroad track whenever playing these games. I'm not here to attack Team Cherry in any way on how to design their games. Silksong and Hollow Knight does allow for a lot of choice direction already, but it's only allowed to a certain extent placed by them. Every game has some sort of direction varying by genre. Though I've never seen the harm of letting player experimentation be encouraged, especially in a Metroidvania genre where Silksong and Hollow Knight fall under. My knowledge of Metroidvanias is limited. I'm not an expert. I do know this genre is infamous for having a major speedrunning community historically for gaming, like the Metroid series, Castlevania, and Ori and the Blind Forest, because this genre demonstrates the best of a player's skill and knowledge in a game overall. So it leaves a bad taste in my mouth when Team Cherry makes odd patch note decisions that you could argue stray away from what makes Metroidvania so great, either because they don't like the players doing these tricks, or they don't see the harm of patching small tricks. And that bad taste lasted throughout my whole playthrough in Act 1 and some parts in Act 3. You could argue the skip I tried to do was my own fault, and I won't argue against it, because even I see flipping the switch doomed me. You can't argue Team Cherry patching these tricks that don't break the game at all isn't a sign of them wanting to keep the average run and a speed run in the same sort of avenue or close to it. It's like being a kid being brought to a playground with all your favorite activities in them, with a bunch of rules and restrictions set in place you have to watch out for. You find a loophole only a select few kids know about with the swing rules. You're only allowed 15 minutes, but you and your friends can use it as much as you'll like, since you notice no one around the time comes to the playground. So there's no harm in hogging the swings if no one comes, and even if another kid comes to use them, you guys will respect the rules and share. It's not until one of the playground owners sees what y'all been up to. They know no one comes around this time, except you and your friends. They know you guys instantly share the swings once someone else comes, but for some reason, they get an ick tingling down their spine seeing you and your friends using this opportunity to get past a rule regardless if it isn't hurting anyone. So they decide to close the playground to fix the issue. Basically, a nuclear option without trying to resolve anything. It's a weird analogy, but this is how I feel with Team Cherry's patch decisions and their approach to area design at times. They're very hard stuck on the rule bracket that they want their players to follow. There's a lot of options to choose where you go, though only because they allow it, with caveats being tied to them. Don't get me wrong, the Metroidvania genre has always been about backtracking back to old areas later in the game. The point I'm trying to make here, and Act 1 in this video, is patience is a virtue. Team Cherry was testing my patience throughout Act 1 with the points I brought up, which left me unimpressed with the majority of Act 1 of Silksong. I wasn't necessarily looking for any expectations to be met. Okay, that's a lie, I did. Maybe some part did want that, since my first playthrough of Hollow Knight is very dear to me. Expectations are dangerous to put on something. Maybe deep down, I did want another recreation of my first playthrough of Hollow Knight, but really, I just wanted the issues I had with Hollow Knight, like the charms, and Team Cherry's questionable restrictive-esque area design philosophy, to be answered. An answer I wasn't happy with, since it was the opposite from my expectations. A danger I realized I had to let go quickly, or else I wasn't going to enjoy Silksong. We can wrap up this section with one last thing. There's also an argument these points don't matter after the first playthrough. The tool system is balanced around Silksong's difficulty, which we'll cover in Act 3, and Act 1 isn't really long when you think about it. You really only have to defeat 3 bosses to unlock Act 2, and I just don't think Act 1 is very interesting to me as a whole, so really, I can just speedrun through Act 1 to get to the parts I do like in Act 2. I'm not all uninterested, but I don't see myself wanting to hang around Act 1 if I replay Silksong, since nothing is locked away moving from Act 1 to Act 2 compared to Act 2 to Act 3. Nothing really wows me essentially in Act 1 from a visual, gameplay, or story standpoint. Maybe to you, but just not to me. So let's just move on to Act 2 since I got everything I wanted out of the way. You know, all the complaints I wanted out of the way. For the sake of video entertainment, obviously I'm over-exaggerating about the point of interest. The earliest I could say the game started to make me pay more attention was unlocking the Reaper crest in Greymoor. Located on the far left side of Greymoor is the Chapel of the Reaper. The chapel really reminds me of Deacon of the Deeps in DS3, due to the candle illuminating the place. A simple parkour and lockdown unlocks a dead bug you can bind with. Binding with the bug unlocks one of the first crests, Reaper. The crest system is our customized loadout system, siding with the tools. Each crest has a unique attack and charm combination. The Reaper is what I stuck for majority of my playthrough because of the pogo, but it's one of 3 crests you can find off the bat besides the default. If you have decided to take on the Hunter's March in the beginning, you will encounter the Beast crest. The act of binding is very literal to Hornet herself. Binding in sewing is described as sewing 2 fabric pieces together and covering up with stitches. Silk in Silksong is a representation of the soul. Hornet is sewing another person's silk into her own. The crests are not just a new moveset for Hornet, it's Hornet binding her soul with another bug soul. Multiple souls reside within Hornet, the more upgrades she binds with. The Beast crest best shows this adoption of silk/souls residing within Hornet. Each crest has a unique heal ability. The Reaper crest after healing allows for more silk collection, and with the Beast crest, it puts Hornet in an enraged state, allowing you to lifesteal masks for a short period of time instead of regaining the 3 masks you would usually get. You hear this animalistic growl Hornet gains from using this crest, demonstrating how each crest has its own touch of personality Hornet gains, and also gives a more personalized feel to the player's playthrough. Team Trey has always excelled in the small details tying into gameplay aspects and lore aspects. One thing I didn't notice until after my playthrough was the crest also showed a needle range for Hornets. When you equip a crest, the crest symbol on your mask shows a needle extending out through your health. The more mask it covers, the longer the needle range. I believe the Reaper crest has the longest needle range. Probably the reason why I stuck with it, since I heavily used the Mark of Pride in Hollow Knight. Before I start talking about Act 2, I want to talk about two bosses in Act 1, Widow and Last Judge. These two bosses are the most memorable in Act 1. I didn't really care for Morwing, Skull Tyrant, and Sister Splinter. Savage Beastfly, I'll just show you the clip. Oh my god, please! What? Oh my god, why? Why, bro? It's like, oh my god. It's like that bug is made to just fucking ruin everything. Because at least with the other bug, I don't have to worry too much. But then, of course, that flying fuck. Anyways, entering Bellheart already shifts the game to an atmospheric eerie creepiness for a moment. The bugs of Bellheart are being hung by Silk. It's not a literal hung, but you can make the argument for it. It's more like Silk is stretching their body tightly, straight, where you can obviously see is torturing them. You also experience their pain by sitting on the bench and exiting the game. Once you load your save file, Hornet will be hung, but you can escape. You make your way all around Shellwood essentially to find entrances tying back to Bellheart. It's gonna be your access point to the boss. You talk to Widow before you actually fight her. She's toying around with the bugs of Bellheart, using the silk she has them restricted under to play a harp-like instrument, presumably keeping them trapped for a wicked sense of pleasure. Widow, upon seeing Hornet, can immediately recognize her being the daughter of the Worm, aka the Pale King and Hollow Knight. At least it's speculated they're the same thing, but you know, I'm pretty sure they are. You also get a first insight behind the true motives in Grandmother Silk's reasoning for Hornet to be brought in Farloom. Widow describes the children of the Worm and Weaves as spawn of those who dare to flee. She believes those children are destined to make their way back to the ancestors' origin point. She compliments Hornet for having a fine shell, silk, and claws meant for Grandmother Silk, insinuating what everyone in Silksong community believes Grandmother Silk's true goal is, of having all essence of Silk be binded to her permanently. After the lore dialogue, we start our duel against Widow. She is the first, from my playthrough at least, quick boss we encounter compared to the ones in Hollow Knight. The speed is really turned up for this fight, which caught me off guard a bit. I started to see how important the cloak really helped with aerial movement. And this is also, like I said earlier, where I noticed the ability to heal in the air. Again, I don't know why it took me so long to notice this when I did it multiple times. Micromanaging projectiles is a really big throw off with how Silksong bosses work. If Widow just had her claw moveset, it would have been easier than it is now. But the bells she brings into the fight is to keep you on your toes, as well as acting as her defensive barrier between you and her for when she is prepared to make her next move. The bells have a mind of their own. Besides it trying to erupt your flow, you also have to keep in mind they linger for a bit instead of disappearing after they hit the ground, so if a bell is coming from a diagonal path, it can come back to bite you, choosing to ignore it. I got the first phase down in 2 tries, but the inner FromSoft part of my brain knew something was up with her going down pretty quickly.
That's it? I'm gonna be honest, that was kind of a bit easy. Never mind, okay, never mind.
Phase 2 doubles Widow's moveset speed. I managed to beat her in 5 tries. She has an annoying moveset, though it's a fun, annoying moveset. You feel more annoyed with forgetting the bells can bounce and learn the consequences quick. Defeating Widow unlocks the Needle-In, Silksong's version of the Dream Nail from Hollow Knight. Instead of seeing someone's thoughts, you unlock lore from bugs by playing the Needle-In besides them and a single melody showing their internal thoughts. The Needle-In acts as our first lore drop for Hornet and Silksong. Binding with Widow puts us in a past memory, presumably those of probably the Widow herself. The parkour sections don't really matter much. The best interpretation for these sequences is trying to climb your way into the memories being blocked off by the individual you are binding with. Making your way through, we see the Weavers playing a harp and a screech interrupting them. I originally thought this was the Radiance, but it's actually hinting at Grandmother Silk's awakening. The Weavers are playing a melody to keep Grandmother Silk asleep. Due to some unknown reason, Grandmother Silk awakens, shaking Farloom forever. This memory serves as a foundation to Farloom's history. Like any difficult game lore structure, every cutscene or event happening to us is happening from the actions of a far past. It's not as far as Hollow Knight where everything is decaying due to the passage of time, but it's still far back. The Weavers themselves are scattered throughout Farloom, providing debuffs to Hornet. You could say they are a guiding system metaphorically by implementing their physical body into these structures for someone to use. Grandmother Silk awakening from her slumber could have caused Weavers to have some internal fighting between them. Widow probably sided with the ones who stayed with Grandmother. explaining why she attacks Hornet seeing her physical attributes. Now for the last judge. Climbing the blasted steps feels like a last hurdle between a bug and heaven. The last few steps exiting from purgatory and into heaven. The world seems to fight those trying to reach the citadel through the blasted steps. A sense of desperation from those before you plays into the background, with the blasted steps actively trying to push those desperations away from the citadel. The layout screams to the player to stay away. Survival in an area like this seems impossible. The area here is depleted of any water. The sands have bugs feasting on anything it comes in contact with, and every mob has gone mad by attacking anything that comes by. You also have the platforming work against anyone who wants to climb towards the citadel. It also seems intentional how the platforming is laid out, not in a gameplay sense, but in a lore sense. This is not only the entrance to the citadel. The other entrance seems less defended and more hidden if anything. You also don't see as many carcasses compared to the blasted steps. The area is hidden behind a hidden wall and you have to go through another area to reach the secret entrance. The blasted steps is the main entrance for the citadel to every ordinary bug in Farloom. So you see some bugs on your way who have seemingly given up or didn't have the physical capabilities to get past the harsh conditions this area spews constantly. Which makes sense since I barely made it to the entrance with one mask left. There's also 2 bugs who have conquered the odds and are waiting by the entrance. Playing your Needle-In is the key towards the heaven, but before you can bask in the glory of the citadel, your Needle-In awakens the last judge. She kills the 2 bugs, and I soon joined their fate right after because, you know, one mask. But on the bright side, Sherma waits by the bench still kicking full of hope. The last judge design to me seems like a mix between a court judge and an executor. You actually come more across of her species before encountering her. There are the soldier bugs scattered to the path towards the citadel and the blasted steps. They're actually native to the blasted steps as you find a hidden room in the area containing these offsprings of the soldiers as babies. We see dead soldiers of these bugs along with the live ones still roaming around this area. You can make the assumption the live ones are close to the end of their life from the dead ones' similar appearance in terms of age to them. The last judge was probably able to ascend above their normal means to join the cause of her race duties to protect the citadel entrance regardless if they aren't a part of the citadel itself. She's the boss who gave me the most trouble in Act 1. Took me around 20 minutes I believe to beat her, and you probably cut that time in half considering the long ass run back to her. Her weapon choice is something similar to a flail, though it doesn't have a handle and she uses the chain part to create range between you and herself. Her weapon is more like a yo-yo if anything. The yo-yo-like weapon is the center in her moveset. First phase is pretty simple. A throw attack, spin attack covering her body, and a slam attack. But what makes her difficult is the additional explosion after effects in her second phase. The throw attack explodes once it lands on the ground. The spin attack summons fire coming your direction, and you will have to play in between it. The slide attack summons the fire pillar from the ground, and the slam attack summons fire all over the floor. The judge isn't done yet, and will actually extend her spin move to catch you if not prepared. But this works against her as she is stunned for a small period, so capitalize quickly since it's small stun. Now, to the people who are wondering, did I fall for her last stand attack?
Yes! Please tell me. She's gonna explode!
I'm not stupid. Read it almost instantly, and knowing Team Cherry, it would have reset my progress, which it does if you die to this attack. After passing judgment, Act 2 begins towards our climb to the heavens. But for a place so revered by the bugs of Farloom, it seems abandoned. Not entirely. You could expect a grand welcoming to a place revered as the heavens by many, and yet it feels hollow from what you would expect. It's not heaven. It might have a colorway heaven gives to someone who believes in it, yet that's all there is to it. This is where I think Silksong excels at gameplay and lore-wise the most, as well as having what was missing to me the entire time of Act 1 compared to Hollow Knight. I know I said visual-wise Silksong areas connect well, but that's only from a design aspect, not a storytelling aspect Hollow Knight is so rendered for. Now, in Act 2, exploring the Citadel and areas connected to it tells a story continuing your way to the top, offering some of the best lore this series has to offer. The entrance to the Citadel is not part of the Citadel itself. I believe this is another judgment zone to determine the bugs who are worthy to join the Citadel, and each zone connected to the Citadel tells a sad truth about the fate behind the Citadel's existence long before Farloom even collapsed. And it all starts with the elevator towards the Underworks. For me at least. The elevator you find nearby leads to the Underworks. One of 3 areas technically joint to the Citadel hierarchy system, the Underwork represents the cruelty a working class system endures to keep everything running for those higher than them, with a false pretense promised to them. You can't maintain diamond without some blood being formed somewhere. This is where the blood from the Citadel comes from. The game teases the blood the Citadel is being built on by having you take an elevator that crashes to the bottom. You wake up with one mask left, and on the next room ahead are some benches you can pay 15 rosaries for. Oh cool, they're actually cheaper than the ones in other area. Oh, I have to keep paying to use them? I wonder why. Anyways, upon entering the Underworks, you already get this sense of dread the atmosphere inhabits between the environment and bugs. The bugs uniform in this area are different from the dead bugs the Citadel entrance had. They wore these nice white cloth on top of their heads, and these ones have these dirty, raggedy ones to theirs. Either from the dirty air and soot around the living conditions here, or given different color ones to determine rank. You see firsthand the conditions these bugs work in. Open areas you can easily fall over from, cramped spaces with steam and spinning blades minimizing your walking space, and heavy machinery creating death traps to those who aren't careful. The Underworks is the operating machine behind the Citadel's glamour. Under the glamour is dread at every corner and lostness of some kind behind their actions. The bugs working feel more like they're doing random actions. Some of the bugs are just picking at random objects to feel some type of usefulness in some way. It's kind of psychotic. You obviously don't feel passionate about repetitive industrial work, but don't want to feel useless in some way due to worries about getting in trouble. But what really sticks out to me the most is rosaries. There's almost no rosaries in the Underworks. The enemy drops 3 rosaries at most, which is kind of pathetic compared to early game areas, and the hidden rosaries corners you usually find are in the single digits. You see dead bugs by the rosaries left on the ground, and the abundance of them have multiple corpses in the background. The benches really start to connect together what's happening here. The bugs in the Underworks are subjugated to slavery essentially, working for pennies and dangerous environments. The 15 rosary prices on the benches don't affect Hornet, depending if your rosary count was high upon entering, but what about the bugs slaving away here? They don't drop much, so you can make a few presumptions. They are wasting all their rosaries to survive. Long hours after working non-stop shifts skews your decision making and thought process. Money is the first and last thing for you to prioritize at times. Like buying an expensive game you know you shouldn't have, but you can't help yourself. The benches might be expensive, but enticing regardless of where they are located. They are located in places very hard to reach, so you can imagine how many have died trying to get a small rest. You also have to consider the time limit placed on the benches. For us, we can sit as long as we want until we get off from it. What about the bugs? It's not far to presume they get to sit for a certain amount of time until they have to work again. For sure though, we could say the pay here is minuscule. We don't have to presume at all from the bugs' rosary drops or the few pathetic rosary strings scattered around here. There's a first-hand experience for us to find behind a hidden ceiling. Loam awaits, or really runs here. Exhaustion is behind every breath he takes. His vision is blurred upon you interacting with him. Hornet reassures him you are no threat to him. Loam notices the cleanliness Hornet has and is relieved to see the Citadel ready to carry him up with them for his hard work. Hornet tells him she is an outsider, not a part of the Citadel. Loam just continues to work. I didn't put the picture together until the treadmill on the right. I decided to put on the Silkspeed anklet because I thought this treadmill device unlocked a hidden door somewhere. So I came back here with the Silkspeed anklet equipped, running until the meter ran to the top where I was rewarded with just 1 rosary. Just a single one. My jaw dropped a bit seeing this, so I rushed to Loam to talk to him for missing dialogue, which confirmed what I thought. The bugs in the Underworks are working for a lie. Loam, as well as some of the Underwork bugs, fully believe if they work hard enough, their efforts would be recognized so they can join the top bugs in the Citadel. Though Hornet tells the truth to Loam about the Citadel's certain conditional downfall, but Loam doesn't even acknowledge what should be a major revelation, and it could be because Loam and many other bugs here are completely brainwashed into a lie of obedience placed on them, using the "if you work hard enough, you can be just like me" excuse to keep the Citadel running. It is a commentary on social structures like the American dream, where historically, yeah, you could argue if you work hard enough, you'll reach a comfortable lifestyle. Yet there's always a hidden underlying reason behind the dream where it exists to benefit companies or a group looking for ways to exploit people. Now more than ever, we are seeing how social constructs like these, existing, come with nasty consequences when forced on a society. People working 2 jobs to barely cover rent and food, promised college degrees becoming useless by the passing years, companies posting fake job offerings or AI job posts for tax exploitations, and many more reasons. This is the storytelling through physical gameplay I was so thirsty for in Act 1 being met here. Actual gameplay wise, there's not much for rewards, just an upgrade and some shards, but the storytelling just by exploring became my hooking point without me realizing it. I am so glad I started with this area for Act 2. You aren't blocked off from exploring the Citadel first if you really want to. though entering the elevator will block you off again, and it's your job to climb your way from the bottom again metaphorically. Something 99% of the bugs here can't do, no matter how much they try. Team Cherry did a phenomenal job recreating what made Hollow Knight so special when it came to building lore and story elements in the series with this area alone, and it doesn't stop here. It keeps going till the end of Act 2. So let's continue after making our way from the Underworks, with Lace welcoming us officially into the Citadel. Lace still mocks Hornet, believing she won't make it near Grandmother Silk. Hornet responds back by saying the Citadel is a dormant civilization with no threats remaining. That dormant state is interrupted by the screams Grandmother Silk ensues through Farloom for the first time. Waking up the bugs she controls with her silk, you will be encountering throughout the Citadel. God, the music here is just enchanting. You have the harp and the light chorus suited so well together as you explore the Citadel. It gives this ominous wonder sense of curiosity brewing constantly in every section within the Citadel. The music grows stronger the more you climb upwards, and the music gets to a stagnant state upon seeing a room that might be important or containing substantial material to Citadel lore. The abandonment design direction really does complement with what the Citadel is trying to portray here. There hasn't been any upkeep compared to the bugs in the Underworks. Unlike the Underworks where things are expected to keep running, the Citadel is uninhabited and is at a standstill, at least until Grandmother Silk woke up. The entrance to the Citadel did a phenomenal job showing a standstill point of the city is currently at, though a presumption is to be made here with Hornet uninvited intrusion. The introduction to Silksong shows the bugs from the Citadel escorting Hornet. Are these bugs under Grandmother Silk's control? It means Grandmother Silk has probably been awake for a long time. You could make the argument Lace is the one pulling the strings for Grandmother Silk first time, though Hornet's entrance to the Citadel does make a lot of sense for Grandmother Silk to wake up for the first time, as Widow and Lace show interest in the structure Hornet has compared to other bugs with Silk and Farloom, especially with Hornet's unique trait to bind to an individual's identity. That doesn't mean everyone in the Citadel is controlled. In the vents and contained hallways of the Citadel, you venture through the dripping water, condensed air pressure, and bugs to find my son Sherma. Oh my god, he's still kicking and filled with whimsy. You might be asking, how did Sherma make it past the judge? Well, the most popular fan theory is since Sherma is free from sin, the judge let him through. This is just a theory, but there's some actual concrete evidence to this. Data miners found a secret passive route where if you can make it to the judge without killing a single bug, you're allowed to enter the Citadel without fighting the judge. This was scrapped due to you needing to kill a boss to leave the Moss Grotto. From this presumption, Sherma has gone his whole journey in Farloom without hurting anything, even in the entirety of his life if you want to make that argument. The judge probably recognizes the purity my son radiates from existence and lets him in. There is some obvious contradiction to this. We're basing this off a scrap mechanic, but we do have some confirmation that scrap mechanics can still be canon to the lore with these series. Hornet being a daughter of the Three Queens actually came from a developer comment made back when Silksong was going to be DLC for Hollow Knight. It was confirmed, I believe, to be a scrapped idea since the DLC turned into a game, as well as the developers confirming not to take any developer comment about the lore as certified answers, nor lore itself.
Like what's in the game is what's in the game, and anything that we say kind of outside that is actually not canon.
Yeah, well, obviously any additional Hollow Knight.
But the fact that the daughter of the Three Queens became an official thing confirmed to me scrap mechanics or ideas can be canon for this series. So the passive route didn't necessarily get scrapped, it just manifested into Sherma's character. Also, we know Sherma didn't take another route. We interact with him right before the judge's boss fight in the Blasted Steps. This creates another contradiction. How does Sherma make it to Citadel before we do if we're going from this presumption? I think this is just an actual gameplay and coding reasons, to be fair. Sometimes we have to ignore reasoning to tie in story elements to what's going on. This is probably a case where the NPC can't move since Act 2 hasn't unlocked due to coding scripts not being met. We also know there is no other route Sherma takes since he is in the Blasted Steps. So I do believe in canon, Sherma makes it past the judge before we do, using the cute song he plays to open the gate, and the judge deems him free from sin. Also, Sherma has been a concept like way before Silksong was even conceived, like the full game. So yeah, because the only reason why I know this is because I was seeing some old Hollow Knight videos, and then like I saw Sherma on it, and I was like, wait, why is Sherma here? And then I learned he's been an idea for a long time. Sherma himself is actually very competent, which is surprising considering he was the same person thanking the gods for opening the gate during the Marrow. Though we see growth in his intuition increase over time. He warns Hornet not to let her guard down in an area as safe as this. An odd piece of advice from someone who thanked the gods for opening a gate in the beginning of the game. Hope still is carrying his motivation regardless compared to Hornet's rationality. so Sherma's advice sticks with us, continuing our climb. One of my favorite things I started to see in Act 2 here is the platforming. A lot of the platforming in Act 1 wasn't anything crazy, to be honest. Very subpar as expected from early game areas, but here, the Citadel starts to shine a lot through the platforming offered here. The Citadel is enriched with treasure for you to find. Only thing between you is a dodgy type platforming and enemies trying to keep you at your place. Open areas are closeted together with flying bugs hovering to kill you and spiky territories trying to limit your movement by covering the walls you try to retreat to at times. The bugs aren't working at random compared to other areas in the game either. They actually work pretty coordinated together, but it's more of a forced coordination if anything compared to an area like the Haunted March. Those bugs actually work as a team of, well, ants. Here, their bodies are trying to mimic coordination. The Citadel constantly tries to lock you down in every major room. You're slowly unlocking your way through the key hallways, reaffirming the standstill state this area is currently at, bringing back some life into these used to be empty halls, and resuming the traffic slowly until you fully unlock the Citadel. The rewards finally get good, oh my fucking god. One thing I didn't mention in Act 1 of this video is the rewards fucking blow so much dick, holy shit. Yes, Team Cherry, I definitely want another bundle of shards instead of good rewards. How could you tell? Why does it feel like you can only find shard bundles? Oh wait, you keep finding them. Hollow Knight rewards felt worthwhile. Charms, geo collectibles, lore items, etc. The average Act 1 reward in Silksong feels like finding a half-eating sandwich and a copy of Morbius on disc compared to Hollow Knight, where every reward felt like winning the lottery. Finally, we get actual good rewards here. We find an abundance in rosaries from enemies and rosary streams compared to the Underworks. Any upgrades found here are heavily locked away as a way to incentivize you to keep unlocking Citadel as you go, because maybe the room above the item you want unlocks it. The pale oil located here is a big culprit for this design direction. It's locked away very heavily, requiring you to explore an entire different area to get to it. You'll encounter these bell puzzles that are fun to do. Honestly, I wish there was more puzzles like these in the game. They don't take too long, and I wouldn't mind certain quests having a small puzzle to do to fill in the repetitive gaps quests tend to have. There are only 3 bell puzzles I believe, and all reward you with a cog heart piece you'll need in Act 3. Everything in the Citadel feels like a reward awaiting for you, capturing back the sense of exploration Hollow Knight did so well. So easily this place became my favorite area in the entire game, and still is. This was my City of Tears moment, unfolding every room, every reward, and every second upon stringing through the Citadel. And it feels like it never stops. This is what I wanted desperately. My brain started to cook up theories thinking I was going somewhere when I really didn't. One of the first theories I tried to think up was the Godseekers are from the Citadel. Quickly shot down just by the bug designs alone. I think seeing the cog machine bugs and bronze color associated with the two made me think this. Though one personal theory I have yet to see people bring up involves one of 2 bosses in this area. I'll get to that a bit later, but as you make your way to the top, you ring the first shrine, officially bringing back life to the Citadel. A bug named Caretaker awakens from the first shrine, magical aura, or maybe because he decided to sleep right next to a giant ass bell, wondering why Hornet rang the bell. The first shrine bell acts as a safe haven guide to lower bugs traveling to the Citadel, in his description, hearing the first shrine awaken. We already saw some bug activity outside the Citadel enemies, like Sherma, Grindel, Garmond, and that one bug who gives you that annoying ass quest, but now the first shrine bell does help elevate the resuming period I was talking about earlier. The more areas you explore connected to the Citadel feels more alive, bringing back a taste of what the Citadel could have been in the past. Where I think this past really comes to shine the most is the Clockwork Dancers, a dual mechanical boss meant to illustrate how preservation is an illusion to cover up those who are desperate to retain a beautiful moment. I am 99% this is the only 4-face boss in this series. The Clockwork Dancers are a prime example on how to do a lore boss right. When a video game tries to add a boss so important to the lore of its narrative direction, the quality comes out questionable. The best example I can think of is King Allen's from Demon's Souls. I'm not deep into Demon's Souls lore, but it's just kind of stupid how there are 2 versions of King Allen, yet they chose to pick the blob looking one for the final boss, technically. Like, I know, like the, I guess Prime King Allen, if you want to say it, you fight right, you know, like it's technically, you could say it's the final boss, but it's not the final boss, it's the blob looking fuck. It probably had to do something with how world tendency and time affects the story happening, but honestly that doesn't mean the boss is good. Sometimes I feel like developers add these bosses to fill in empty areas to pan out content. I'm not saying every boss needs this grand spectacle and needs to be 10 out of 10 experience. But when developers add lore bosses, I expect something to differentiate them from their usual roster. And no, being annoying nor the boss doing nothing is an answer. Plus, technically every boss in any game is a lore boss, regardless how important they are. Just them having a special spot as a boss puts them in that discussion category. Obviously there's exceptions, but it doesn't matter here. The Cogwork Dancers function perfectly, trying to flaunt its story capabilities, while also not straying away from what makes this series' bosses so good. Each phase tells a story up to the player's interpretation of the Green Prince's recorded past. Phase 1 starts as a prologue to their performance. They start the boss fight in a rhythmic support choreography for Phase 1. It's a slow burning watch to what's to come in the next 3 phases. They work to cover each other's back in a planned horizontal, vertical, and diagonal pattern. They'll cover their own 180 while trying to cover the other's dancer's back when close. Then come together in the middle to fully protect each other and gaze upon their partner for a bit in their own recorded world. A slow, steady love just starting up. Phase 2 winds up the pace. Now begins the main act for this dance. The two dancers start to coordinate more in sync and speed up the pace. They don't necessarily abandon each other's back, but take the aggressive side by side, adding a new move to their arsenal, covering the arena. Though whenever they wind up again for Phase 3, something feels off-centered. They go back to the Phase 1 routine, and yet something feels really off. It's like they're trying to sync up again, but one can't seem to get their rhythm down to their partner's pace, so they try to compensate in speed. It could be due to the player's actions slowly destroying a dancer. Cogs fall off every hit the dancers take from Hornet. So each phase, you're slowly destroying a preserved past. Now my thought process for Phase 4 was, I know Phase 4 is going to be crazy, expecting one of the dancers having a demon press moment in PS3 where defeating one makes the other one go berserk. And crazy it was. Just not in the way I expected. The opposite actually. As the final dancer winds up for its solo performance, the music changes when the dancer enters the arena. It is a far cry to the speedy moment Phase 2 and 3 had. The dancer goes back to Phase 1 again with a slow, sad instrumental playing. Every move is the same from Phase 1 except for one, the other dancer. It proceeds to just go back to doing what it knows because it is lost. Without their partner, the dancer can't seem to get its rhythm down like it did Phase 1 to 3, but because it is a machine, it can only mimic a duo dance by itself. No one is there to gaze upon their eyes in the middle, so you, the player, put down a miserable solo performance to let them rest, shattering a beautiful moment in time. This boss fight took me off guard so much. I did not expect Phase 3 to hit me as much as it did. This boss could have easily been a spectacular fight mechanical wise, but I'm not mad with the direction Team Cherry went for, demonstrating a love story through dance. It is such a twist I did not expect, and I felt a bit distraught knowing the actions Hornet takes destroys a memorable piece of Farloon's history. It is also an amazing teaser to Green Prince's quest, and Hornet's actions could allude to the Green Prince's partner's fate. This doesn't relate to the theory I mentioned earlier. This is a good time to talk about Green Prince's purpose though. He shows up in the Citadel after freeing him from Sinner's Road. You can free him with a key, and once you do, he shows up in the Citadel disgusted seeing the halls he promised not to set foot on. In the Cogwork core, he is seen next to the Cogwork Dancer's corpse, and we learn a bit about his partner's fate. From what I get from the dialogue, his partner and the Citadel set a deal for Verdania's protection, and the partner decides to offer himself up as a slave essentially for the Citadel's entertainment. The Green Prince has no reason but to abide out of desperation. Verdania's situation is unknown to why the Green Princess sought for the Citadel's protection, though I'm willing to bet it has to do with something water crisis related since the current Verdania is emptied. The Green Prince reluctantly hated the idea, but couldn't speak up his true feelings knowing Verdania needed a lifeline against what was going on. Also, I'm just presuming about the situation. It could have been that the Citadel offered anything else. So take a grain of salt with what I'm saying, because I'm making presumptions here based on the current Verdania and the Verdania we see in the past. Even after Grandmother Silk was overtaking Verdania, the Green Prince kept hope for the Citadel to help Verdania. The real reason though is that the Green Prince was afraid of his partner's fate, created as a machine of his former self. So the Green Prince takes a remnant past to the current Verdania and thanks Hornet for doing what he was too cowardice to do. Act 3 allows you to enter the Green Prince memories, seeing the peak Verdania had in the past. It feels wrong invading a private memory you have no right to do, and it is. The Green Prince is scattered around Verdania, unable to remember the peak properly. He is rightfully frustrated having the race of the Weavers invading his memories since they are technically a part of his partner's downfall. The past is a haunting reminder to him constantly. I believe what happened was the Citadel used his partner to create the Cogwork Dancers and retain his partner's elegant dance. A living organism can't live forever, so they managed to create something that could forever capture the Green Prince's partner, and when they completed their project, they found no use for him anymore. His dance was his only worth in their eyes. Once they had it, they discarded him and maybe used his body to create the cogwork dancers, leaving no trace of the partner left in the process. I also do believe the Green Prince is suicidal in some way. Fucking Christ, bro. Sometimes when I write these scripts, I misspell a lot, and then instead of writing Hornet, I fucking typed in horny, and I was, fuck, bro. Hornet probably sees the state the Green Prince is in, and decides to permanently erase the past relating anything to the Green Prince by giving him a harsh solace he probably desires. The cogwork dancers are the peak to my journey throughout the Citadel, and sets a message about how it operates. Areas connected to it, like the Blasted Steps, the Slab, Memoriam, White Ward, Underworks, and Whispering Vault, act as an extension point to the Citadel's benefit by having those areas extract resources out of reach to the main hub. We see the negative effects constantly throughout Farloom and how areas like Verania collapse due to a lie, and then those lies are covered up. The areas that are directly connected to Citadel, including the Citadel itself, are not an exemption to this lie though. This is how the areas operate and why I love Act 2 so much. The Cogwork Dancers did an amazing job narratively through its gameplay and is the key reason why I think very highly of Act 2 and the Citadel itself. To the platforming, rewards, lore drops, and themes, the Citadel is the peak of Act 2 entirely, and just because this is the peak for me doesn't mean it stops. The areas directly connected to it take one or two aspects from it to build upon the Citadel figuratively and literally. A lie is the foundation to these areas. I'm gonna be honest, the one area that still confuses me a lot is the Whispering Vaults. Its main purpose is to act as a library to keep the Citadel's secrets, but this area is a maze filled with mysteries when it comes to lore and gameplay structure. You have a bunch of these soldier-like bugs roaming everywhere, ambushing you, which feels weird having soldiers like these in an area like this. There's no organization to this place. You constantly move boxes around to get a pathway going, and I wonder to myself, is there even anything valuable in terms of information for the Citadel to recruit this many bugs? Vault Keeper Karnas can be found here to progress the main quest. You can retrieve cylinders for him, and he's very protective with what the cylinders contain. The soldiers here, including the Vault Keeper, operate with this theocracy system, having knowledge be the basis of their religious beliefs. Cardenas believes knowledge will set him free from his condition, but I find a few things counterintuitive in his beliefs. It seems Cardenas is the few bugs who know of the Weaver's true purpose and has a hateful view towards them. But he still plays the cylinders for Hornet even though she is half Weaver and an outsider, as well as giving Hornet an item containing copies of the cylinders for her to use in the Belhard home. It seems Karnas can't escape the brainwashing the Citadel implemented for the Whispering Vault and follows the status quo for the religious beliefs this place has for eternal knowledge, or most likely Karnas is desperate for an answer for his condition and has no choice but to rely on this religious belief to set him free. It could be both where Karnas knows what's going on, but he's so far deep into his cause that he is unconditionally brainwashed without realizing it. Whispering Vault is one of those areas you have so little to work with what's happening, and you have to presume in your head how you want to perceive it. The odd one out in this area is Trobio. I don't see how Trobio exactly fits here. I know you find a cylinder near his boss arena, but that's about it. There's not much to his reasoning being here I could find. That's why I consider him to be part of the main Citadel like the Cogwork Dancers. Let's cover Trobio before I start covering the slab. The theory I wanted to talk about earlier relates to him. My theory is, I fully believe Trobio is part of the Grim Troops, or at least a very big fan. His whole identity screams fanboy, and his presentation seems very inspired to how the Grim Troops operate. The Grim Troops operate in a musical, play-like system for the tribe. Grim bows to you in his space form, meeting him for the first time, and at the audience during Pantheon 5. His nightmare form has a grand introduction to match his ideal performance he envisions himself. Matching a performance with a fight is not new for the series. Mantis Lords, Dung Defender, Carmelita, Cogwork Dancers, etc. But Grim takes a more over-the-top direction. He is a performer first, before a fighter. Grim lives to please the audience through whatever he presents to them. It's how their tribe operates. Troupe does mean a group of dancers, actors, or other entertainers with tour to different venues, so why wouldn't someone like Trobio idealize the Grim Troupe? It checks all the boxes compared to other bosses who are performers as well. Other bosses don't really follow the same formula as Grim since they fight with performance instead of vice versa. There's no actual evidence supporting Trobio being a troupe member, so I'll just work with what I got because I know people use the Wisp ticket as evidence with the fire and the red colored hoods. I'm going to be doing the same thing essentially for my theory. Trobio welcomes Hornet to a stage and courtly invites her to perform with him. It's the same type of invitation Grimm gives to the knight after completing the Grimm Child quest. Trobio describes Farloom's fire fading away, and both him and Hornet will revive it by setting it ablaze, a very literal description during your performance with him. Trobio's moveset follows the same principal idea to how Grimm's moveset works. The bosses require you to land hits in between their moves, with certain moves allowing for some leisure depending on their actions. Grimm's ground spike shows this the best. The time you have to react to his spikes are generous, and the time in which he recovers to his next action allows you to heal or attack him if you can figure out the hitbox timer to the attack. The bat projectile also is a good example since the attack pattern can change, but once you see which pattern it is, you can easily get more than one nail hit on him. Trobio essentially works the same and follows the disappear after every attack method. What makes Trobio a bit different besides the actual moveset is that he is very enthralled in his own world compared to Grimm. Grimm works side by side with the knight and even calls the knight the true star in their performance. Trobio though is a very different type of performer here. He sort of uses Hornet as a way to boast his own performance in their duel, which doesn't feel like a duel to begin with. It feels as if Hornet is an excuse to spark up the arena for an invisible audience long gone in the Citadel. None of Trobio's moves, besides one, really feels like he's targeting you necessarily. There's an illusion at play covering how Trobio's moves dance around you. His fireworks have a small conscience behind them in some sense. I don't feel hostility really from any of his firework attacks, and if you pay attention, it doesn't seem as if Trobio is actually trying to target you. The only move targeting you is his spinning tornado move. There are some attacks that mimic Grimm's own moveset. The tornado attack I mentioned reminds me of Grimm's dash attack, the firework ground attack has the same vibe as the fire pillar attack, and the firebomb and actual firework attacks is Trobio's equivalent of Grimm's fire ranged attack. If Trobio was just only this version, I wouldn't make this point. What certifies my confidence in Trobio being a troop member is his second fight with him. Surprise surprise, he's not dead. Killing Trobio doesn't mean he's dead. Trobio gives this overdramatic death scene when you defeat him. He goes on like this for a good amount of time. If you pay attention, he raises his head when you're about to leave. I didn't get any recording of it, but I did hear a voice looking back at the fight recording. Speaking of recording, did you know I don't have footage of Trobio 2? Yeah, so I did Trobio 2 in Act 3, but I had an issue with the recording software. It bugged out by showing this weird visual effect, and I accidentally deleted the footage since I was trying to fix it. Well, I do know, but I probably just goofed up if anything, though I only lost filler recording, but Trobio 2 got caught by accident. I'll still talk about him. Honestly, I'll probably just put a purple filter over the first fight. Just imagine all the attacks but purple. That's all you have to imagine. That's how the fight is. What makes Nightmare Grimm so much more difficult than his base form is how the small additions really shift the difficulty around. In my Sekiro video, I described how Father Owl's phase 1 and 2 changes in his moveset really affects how you confront him in a back and forth. To put it simply, phase 1 should be full aggression and phase 2 should be aggression with caution in regards to the small changes in Owl's moveset, since it alters your approach process to him, even if the moves are the same at face value. This is how Nightmare Grimm and Trobio's 2 gameplay designs follow compared to their base form. I remember Nightmare Grimm took me around 2.5 hours my first time. The small additions to his moveset were a big reason why. Take his dash attack. The base is just a simple shadow dash, but in his nightmare form, the dash attack has a fire trail following it, so using your own dash is obsolete. Pogoing on him while avoiding the fire is the only option. Trobio's second form does take a tribute to Nightmare Grimm's design direction in an even more flashy route. The flashiness and pizzazz factors from Trobio are ramped up. The whole fight feels like an epileptic kid's worst nightmare. I could barely see half the time with this fight because every move gets some sort of addition to it where the game is just flashbanging you like holy fuck, like it gets crazy. The firework move is the worst offender to this. Trobio would just suddenly have pyromancy come from his body and then summon fireworks completely blinding the area with this ablazoned aura. His new spirited extensions make you pay mind to your positioning more since like Nightmare Grimm, your positioning range is cut in half, including the air. The tornado attack has fireworks following it, including the mini tornadoes he throws at the end. So ideally you will need to pogo off of him and stay far from him, or keep pogoing to avoid damage. The firework balls get the biggest upgrade in my eyes. They cover more directions in their explosions, and it seems as the projectile spawn rate increases to further limit your mobility. Sometimes Trobio will say fuck it and launch this firework laser thing at random like a shotgun. The amount of times I've fallen for this was so frustrating because it's so fast and it comes out randomly. Unless you are far from him, you better keep this move in your mind. Both Trobios follow the same layout as Grimm, but unlike Grimm, he performs for himself or Hornet directly depending how you view it. The flashiness aspects to his performance against you seems very heavily inspired to what the troops would use in a more flamboyant style. To the similar moves, the 2 phases, and color scheme of Trobio, I believe he was a troop member. I have 3 possibilities though. 1. The troops have visited Farloom and Trobio was already a member, so the Citadel convinced Trobio to stay so he can create his own legacy. 2. The troops still visit Farloom, but Trobio was not a member at all and rather a Citadel member. The performance was probably so inspiring, he probably took up the mantle to be an equivalent performer as the troop members for the Citadel. The last theory, which is my favorite honestly, is they probably kicked out Trobio from the troop and left him at the Citadel. There's no denying Trobio is very outgoing. He is in his own zone field in the fight. That outgoingness probably didn't resonate with the troop members since they take pride in making sure the performance resonates with whoever is watching. The troops' viewpoints and Trobio's own viewpoints and performance didn't align with each other, so the troops probably just left Trobio in Farloom. The troops might have been annoyed with him as well. Regardless, I hope my theory is true beyond just mental gymnastics, and I do want to see a Trobio twin fight at some point. It's kind of weird the tools he gives you combined together, kind of hinting there are probably 2 Trobios. Again, mental gymnastics. Let's cover the slab and move on. Now, the slab as an area is kind of I'ma be honest. I didn't get the Hornet naked scene, sadly, because I was too good at the game. So I went through the regular entrance to the slab instead of kidnapping scene you can get early in the game. What I really want to talk about here is First Sinner. I'm just going to be straight up. First Sinner is my favorite boss in Silksong by a mile. More than Lost Lace, Widow, or even Carmelita. I consider First Sinner a boss that every boss in Silksong should follow in design principle or match the quality to it. It's a boss I really expected a lot of the Silksong bosses were gonna be when I initially started the game. Though that conversation is for Act 3. You locate First Sinner in the hidden section of a room locked behind a door. You need the key of Heretic to unlock this door. The room has a chest filled with rosaries initially, but if you notice, there's a cracked pathway on the ceiling. I believe you need the Silksong ability to gain access, unless you are me and use the chest hitbox to gain extra height, giving you just enough height to reach the pathway, as long as you have the double jump. It's a really sneaky way to hide such an important boss if you're not paying attention. At the end of the pathway lies a chained prison-like structure. Interacting with it gives you dialogue. Penitent, first of the first, guilty of the sin of apostasy. Penance by constriction, absolution denied. Destroying the chains gains you access inside. A weaver statue similar to the ones you find in Farloom awaits. Half spawn of a distant land, within this cage I have awaited. Let my strength be bound to yours. Reclaim the future of our accursed kingdom. You bind to it, but the bind is broken by First Sinner coming out of the Weaver statue. The fight testing Hornet's worth begins, and a test it is. First Sinner does not hold back at all. First Sinner's moveset works to test every part of Hornet's abilities. Each move works as a way to restrict your decision choices one after another and encourage spontaneous decision making, differentiating from the last one you make. No matter your playstyle, First Sinner makes sure to shut down your current action and forces you to take a different action to stay alive or do damage. What makes First Sinner such a fearsome tester to you is her ability to chain movesets to force this decision making to you. Remember, bosses in this game won't necessarily wait for you to punish, but still leave a generous window in between attacks to capitalize. First Sinner says, "Fuck that," and does not hesitate to cut off her moves to start the next one. Her teleportation is one tool in her arsenal to set the speed in this confrontation. It's her main reliance of how she can keep chaining attacks together. The fight already starts really fast. I think I died 15 seconds my first try. Sinner's moveset resembles a lot like Widow's. They share the swipe attack, but that's about it. The resemblance comes a lot with their fighting styles utilizing melee and silk combat effectively. Though the moveset as a whole resembles Hornet's combat style, if anything, utilizing the air and taking it as her own. She only really has 2 melee moves, the swipe attack and angled diagonal attack, her own version of a pogo essentially. Where it really comes together is her silk abilities. It serves as a binder to make sure all her moves work in synergy. You'll notice whenever she does a binding animation similar to when Hornet heals, it's a quick indicator she will use a silk ability. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't notice this until I rechecked the recording. So I spent the whole time wondering why she was doing this animation. She has 5 silk abilities. 4 of them are combative using silk needles and 1 of them passive. The 3 combat silk abilities are cross stitch, a vertical line of needles covering the arena, 3 diagonal needles across the arena, and 2 horizontal needles coming from either left or right of the arena. These moves work to restrict your air mobility and keep you grounded. These 4 moves work as a bread and butter to her moveset and try to catch you off guard when you least expect it. She will repeatedly try to cut you off from punishing by teleporting away or cutting your dash short using another attack. I've had multiple instances where she would just try to catch me off guard in the air with her diagonal slash, as the silk spears are still in the air, and using her swipe attack right in front of my face spontaneously. Combine that with her teleportation, her moveset forces to restrict your own moves as much as possible. You are playing in her field since she is testing you before you can bind to her. This fight encourages seizing any opportunity to play your move against her, either by damaging her or healing, which you barely have any openings to do. Sinner does not give you one confident opening. The 5th silk ability is Sinner's equivalent to Hornet's Mask Binding. Disrupting it shows you the same silk interruption Hornet experiences when an enemy hits you during the binding animation, giving you an opportunity to pump out damage for a quick few seconds. I'd like to think First Sinner is a skill check boss for you hidden away. All her moves cover the bases to your skills as a player, and anything you lack in combat will catch up to you. That's why phase 1 took me around 20 to 30 minutes to get used to. I struggled a lot with the aerial movement, and my lack of positioning awareness was a big factor to my phase 1 struggle. The issue lied with me getting too comfortable staying in the same position as I'm gliding to the ground constantly, forgetting that First Sinner is playing red light green light with the air and ground. It explains why swipe attacks were constantly tripping me up. I was waiting for any of the silk abilities to finish, but Sinner was already on her next move to catch me off guard. Pogoing off her did work at times, though the hitbox was inconsistent to her blades, and sometimes I was too low near the floor to pogo. Where I started to see consistency was moving ahead with my positioning. If she summoned the horizontal spears, it was safe to say she will use her melee attack right after. All I needed to do was land on my feet quickly and get behind her so her attacks would miss. If she decided to chain the other silk abilities together, my positioning would avoid me from them. It's all very fast paced, and you will need to have your basic combat skills in check for phase 1. Just for phase 1. I was praying, I remember in this instance, I was praying that there was just a only one phase fight, but in Silksong fashion, my answers were met with another phase. Sinner goes from I'm testing your abilities to fuck you, I hope you die, by picking up the teleportation speed pace and one new silk ability. The new silk ability covers the arena with these aura energy balls. You might have seen this move before in Hollow Knight with Pure Vessel, confirming in some way Pure Vessel was half Weaver, if you want to push it, to be honest. This new silk attack works oddly. The scattering pattern for the ability is random, and yet it does its job well to mesh with the other silk abilities. I wouldn't necessarily it works well, more like it does its job well by itself that the other silk abilities can capitalize. Sinner doesn't really have cooldowns to her moves, so this one ability can really show how quickly this fight can get out of hand. I had multiple instances where Sinner would just use this move, then proceed to use the other silk abilities along with her using a melee move in the process. So I had like 3, maybe even 4 moves happening at once on my screen. My brain felt so overloaded at everything happening. But if you manage to overcome all that, First Sinner allows you to bind with her, unlocking Rune Rage, the aura energy silk ability Sinner used in her test against you. We can finally talk about the Weavers more here. At the end of the parkour backflash, we see a cutscene of a regular Weaver bug transforming into a fully grown Weaver resembling First Sinner. She called us daughters. Call us divine. She lied. So we already know from Widow that there was probably infighting between the Weavers at some point. And I believe First Sinner was the catalyst to this infighting between the two sides. Not only that, I also think First Sinner was the first Weaver in general to be under Grandmother Silk control, believing Grandmother's will. It's ironic the first Weaver was the first to see the true nature Grandmother's grand plan held. Like I said, motive still unclear, but it could be from seeing how Grandmother Silk was using them to grow her own power stronger, grooming the Weavers to later consume them. First Sinner is the only Weaver we've seen from both games to have her mask shattered. We know how important masks are in this series. They give conscious awareness to bugs and provides an identity to individuals in Farloom and Hollow Nest. In Hollow Knight, you find this bug who creates masks. I believe his name is Mask Maker, and he gives insight on how mask provides identity to the bugs. If a bug doesn't have a mask, then they don't have an identity. Something similar to that aspect. I'll put it up in the screen. First Sinner mask shattering was most likely the sin she committed among the Weavers. It was an indicator to how she wanted to escape Grandmother Silk's control, and because of that action, many other Weavers followed suit, causing infighting. One side who wanted to be free from Grandmother Silk's control, Group A, and another who served without questions, Group B. One thing is clear here, there was no right sides. The Weavers were the ones keeping Grandmother Silk asleep, and they all knew the dangers of having her awake. So the solution was clear. Have other bugs in Farloom do the work through the Citadel. That was the true purpose for its existence. To trick the bugs in Farloom to play the melody the Weavers have played for centuries through a promised light of luxury to annotate for their own mistakes. You clearly see this with the White Ward, an experimental area where they could use bugs in the Citadel to forcibly infuse them with silk with various degrees of success, as well as experiment with silk itself, since there's a boss in the White Ward that gives you a silk ability as well, like a silk upgrade I mean. Though if it did work, the bugs in the Citadel were forced to play a constant rhythm pattern to keep Grandmother Silk asleep. We don't necessarily know which side actually built the Citadel. There's an argument for both sides. Side A created the Citadel to achieve their freedom while looking for a solution, or even just leave the responsibility to other bugs in Farloom. And we even get hints of this by Widow when she says that a lot of the Weavers left Farloom. Or if that's not the case, Side B created the Citadel to groom more bugs for Grandmother Silk's goal, while they hunted down any Weavers left to make up for the lower number count. No side in my eyes was a right side. First Sinner's desperate escape from Grandmother Silk was the reason to the Weaver's collapse and led to the Citadel's creation, so it makes sense why thematically why she's in the slab. The slab is a prison to bugs as a way to repent what they did wrong, but the bugs here are so used to the slab that they generally believe no amount of salvation will change them. Again, we don't know who put the first sinner in the slab. It could have been Group B, Group A, or even both, since they probably unanimously agree First Sinner is the reason why the problem arose. You can even say First Sinner also volunteered to be put in a slab to repent and aid Group A in their cause to find a solution. The Weavers in Group A are the Weaver statues across Farloom, providing aid to someone who could potentially stop Grandmother Silk's eventual unstoppable wrath. It also puts into perspective how the Weaver statues actually operate. If First Sinner was able to stay alive after years being stuck in a prison, it's not far to presume the other Weavers were alive until Hornet arrived. You can also argue that the construction First Sinner was in stop time or something is kind of weird in this game. We don't know if they operate on human time, bug time, or time just doesn't exist. If you know what I mean. I don't know. That's probably the reason why Weaver even stayed alive the whole time since First Sinner stayed alive the whole time since the contraction she was in kept her alive. It was a gamble since you need Hornet's bind ability to gain the Weaver's own abilities. So Hornet was really the only one who could answer to the Weaver's desperate answer for Grandmother Silk's wrath. With First Sinner experiencing Hornet's bind, she wanted to make sure Hornet was the one they needed, so she tests her. And Hornet manages to pass her test, giving First Sinner a sense of relief, being able to atone for her sin, whether warranted or not. Hornet is the pillar the Weavers needed, and Hornet binding with First Sinner was her accepting the will of the Weavers. This pretty much wraps up the main stuff I want to talk about for Act 2. I know there's a lot, and I will still talk about it, but this marks everything I mainly like from Silksong. I'm going to cover each area quickly, some things in Act 3, and then move to Act 3 itself. Mount Fae is easily my favorite area when it comes to platforming, hands down. Silksong excelled so well at challenging the player's parkour skills, and Mount Fae is the peak of Silksong's platforming content. The ice hazards contained here are really brutal. You only have a few seconds to reach every safe space. One mistake resets your progress from freezing to death or falling, though you get an amazing reward on top of the cinematic scripted events on your way back down. Also, this area is just filled with so much rewards and lore stuff. One of my favorite things from this area was finding the hidden mask in the area, or one of the hidden mask shards in the area, where you break like a ceiling, and then you go into this room, break other stuff in the room, then you go into a hidden room, and then you climb to the top with these giant bugs blocking your way you have to use to parkour. That experience was so amazing. I love that hidden mask shard. It was so good. Actually, a top 5 experience in this game. I also wish more areas were like the Mount Fae, where the parkouring skills are constantly challenging you. Not every area, but a good amount of areas, because there's only a few areas that do that, but still, I think that's what gives Mount Fae its uniqueness. Also, the soundtrack is so calming as well. It complements well with the whole I'm climbing towards the top of Farloom. Like, Mount Fae is the true peak of Farloom instead of the Citadel. Not heaven itself, but more like the above the whole world. Above the whole world that Hollow Knight had with the mountain area where you collect the Pale Ore, and then you see the Absolute Radiant statue there. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of that, but it's done really well regardless. It matches the same quality as that. I know I said the Citadel was my favorite part of the game overall, but Mount Fate comes really close because aesthetically everything is just amazing, and the hardcore focus on the platforming. I love it. It is so good. Honestly, we need more areas like this in this game, and I really want them to push the platforming even further because it was just done so well with Mount Fate and other areas as well. The Cogworks also joins Mount Fate in this conversation as it's the best showcase to test your platforming knowledge. Like, just look at speedrunners, they're crazy with this area. I didn't even know you could do this. Bow sits at the opposite spectrum. It is such a love and hate relationship with this place for me. The enemy variety is horrendous, the water is an annoying debuff, and the platforming is brutal, but it does have its charm. Team Cherry definitely were trying to torture the player here. They actively place traps through rewards to bait players constantly. And yes, I did feel the ultimate despair seeing the bench break below me. I hated it, it was such a bait, and I'm mad that that's even a thing because I was like on one mask and I was desperate for just some type of lifeline in this area. But it was like, it reminds me a lot of, this area reminds me a lot of my first DS1 gameplay. Since the first half of the game you'll be suffering a lot, but it's a satisfying suffering because all the progress you make towards the game feels rewarding, and Bow does give that rewarding satisfaction whenever you can conquer everything and defeat the Grohl boss. Sinner's Road is very meh, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't care for this place much. The hidden parkour area for the bench was kind of fun, and I'm pretty sure I was at one mask as well, trying not to die, and I remember sweating bullets trying to get to this area or trying to get this bench because I was not gonna go through that whole run back again to make it top tier. Sometimes Silksong for its run backs are one of the most annoying aspects in this game. Like, it's done well at other areas, but done really badly and done really badly in others. I don't know. Like, take Mount Fei for example. For Mount Fei, I didn't mind the long run back every time I died because the parkour was just that good. I enjoyed replaying it, but I hated running back to Sinner's Road since if you don't get the bench here, you're gonna be running all the way from Greymoor to get here, and probably a long path if you don't have any upgrades. I hate petrified ducks. Yeah, that's all for that area. The second lace boss fight does its job very well, and it's always fun to fight her. I like the whole, oh, she's the benchmark. She's like the official benchmark for the game. She's not the hidden benchmark like First Sinner is, but Lace is just the benchmark overall for the player as you go through the game. And this fight was actually pretty difficult as well. She moves faster than her first boss fight, and she gains new extensions on her moves as well. Try to compete the air with her because she does have a lot of counters to you, and she doesn't give you a break to punish. She's gonna keep backing off and try to attack you non-stop. And I like her whole chained attacks as well. Also, God, her voice is so... Oh, man, fuck this quest specifically because I hate the run back. Oh my God, I hate this quest so much. Why does this fat buck even need this shit? Speaking of quests, I felt pure hatred course my body seeing my son being captured. So naturally, I needed to commit a small genocide to those who dared hurt him. I really love how this really shows the truth to Sherma about the Citadel. But where others will grovel to the thought of their journey being for nothing, Sherma transforms his enthusiasm and wonder into a new goal to guide those who are like him, finding new purpose in Act 3 to take care of survivors from the Void invasions. That hopeful desire for a better future never left him. Such an amazing character arc for this game. And I really do hope we see more of that in like the DLC announcement. I hope Sherma gets more content, and I swear to God, if he dies in the DLC, I will send a pipe bomb to Team Cherry. All jokes though, all jokes. So a thing I've learned about difficult video games is every difficult game will always have online controversy / discourse behind its release, no matter how good the game actually is. the conversation about player accessibility and difficulty is always brought up. FromSoft has been the forefront for this conversation. People act like Elden Ring was the first game in their catalog, displaying how FromSoft's game philosophy shows the flaws in their game design principle in terms of difficulty. But if you actually paid attention to their release catalog, this conversation has happened for every game since Dark Souls or even Demon Souls. It's just Elden Ring has been their first real mainstream success compared to other projects. Even if we talk about DS1, even though DS1 was voted as Game of the Decade, Elden Ring was still their first major mainstream hit. It was to the point where even people who don't play video games was playing Elden Ring. That's how good Elden Ring was. You can find so many videos talking about Elden Ring's difficulty fairness from every perspective in the community. Whether you think Elden Ring is fair or not is up to you. I see fair points for both sides. Though what is important here is the topic about accessibility, not towards people with actual disabilities, it's for gamers as a whole. I'm going to be straight up. If you think difficult games should be accessible to everyone, then you might be a bit slow. I'm not saying this as an elitist, and I'm not trying to insult you. Kind of. I'm saying this because why is difficulty an exception to a team's game vision? People will make fun of gamers who can't get into a genre of games, like RPG games, indie, etc. But will actively make the argument every game should have difficulty options. Why is difficulty an exception when difficulty is an important factor to game design? It lays out how you're going to determine interactions between the players and the environment they are put in. So when I see people say, oh, I liked insert difficult game, but it's too difficult so I drop it, I question, why did you even play it? People will try to argue against you by bringing up how a game shouldn't use difficulty to block out certain players, or argue how games will be better with difficulty options. I wonder to myself, how would you know that? You didn't develop the game, and the developers who did obviously balanced the game with a certain difficulty cap in mind. Like, I always hear the argument, like, well, we're just gonna take Elden Ring for example, because, you know, I brought it up, and then, of course, like FromSoft, how can I not glaze FromSoft? But I always hear people say, like, oh, I love exploring Elden Ring, or like going around the area with the art direction cinematic viewpoint of the Elden Ring world. But they always bring up how, like, oh, but I hate the difficult bosses though, because like I can't get to them. Getting to those moments is one of the rewards you get. Literally, getting to those story moments or like the worldview moments is part of the charm of Elden Ring. Take Saint Trina, for example, she is locked away behind a boss, and when you defeat the boss, getting to her might not be much in retrospective, but if you're really deep into the story, you see how just important she is to Miquella's character. Like, she is begging the player to save Miquella, or like to put an end to Miquella's plan, and it's one of the best lore drops you can get. Sometimes to get those rewards, you have to conquer those odds, even if you don't like it personally, because if you truly like those moments, you will try everything in your power to get to them. But what really pisses me off is those people who admit they are not good at games, but will use their lack of skill as an argument how the game should offer option to players like them who care about other aspects in the game. To those people, I'm fucking with you. Kinda. I understand liking certain aspects of a game and being uninterested in other attributes. I feel the same way about Bloodborne when it comes to the lore and story compared to actual gameplay. Though why do you shield yourself behind your flaws as an excuse to warrant a change you are unsure will actually work? Again, take Elden Ring or any FromSoft game for example. These games were built on conquering the impossible regardless of skill level, no matter how many tries it takes, days, weeks, or even months. The moment you give up, the game wins. In the grand scheme, it doesn't matter. Your life doesn't change and the game doesn't as well. But that's exactly the point. The game will continue without you. You didn't link the flame, you didn't become Elden Lord, you didn't embrace the void, and so on and so forth. You become another statistic in these games because you refuse to achieve the impossible and use your lack of skills to hide behind that truth, resulting in you never experiencing some amazing moments these games have to offer. Yeah, you might not be, like, obviously when you're playing a game you want to enjoy yourself, but if you enjoy yourself in other things what the game is known for, but you notice that you have to conquer some pretty hardcore stuff to get to those things, then just try to get through them regardless, because you could easily just search it up. You can easily just search up those moments, but you might say it's not the same. And if that's the case, then go experience it for yourself. Go do it. Don't just hide behind your lack of skill. Use that as motivation to keep conquering the odds against you to get to those moments you really enjoy. An elitist take, if you will, though let me bring up one more thing. Kai Cenat beat Elden Ring. A goldfish beat Elden Ring. I don't think I need to bring up why these arguments are stupid. Alright, naturally, with this logic, Silksong also had a difficulty controversy with its release. Now, I decided to wait for my opinion until I completed the game, and I'll say this. I agree with the people complaining about Silksong's difficulty. Again, kind of. Silksong for me is unbalanced everywhere. To put it simply, the enemy variety and environment dangers are way too overtuned, while the main bosses are too underpowered. I think I know the answer why. Besides the tools I mentioned in Act 1, you might have noticed I've avoided talking about the crest in detail. I was saving them for this section. I believe the crest represents the best, or the worst depending how you see it, showing on how I believe Silksong's difficulty was not taken into account until much later, leading to Team Cherry overtuning the game in some areas and undertuning the bosses a lot. Listen, before I get into this, I need you to understand, I do not work with Team Cherry, so what I say here could easily be debunked from them saying, hey, you're wrong about how we design our games. Though it doesn't change how I really feel about the game, because while the crests are fun to use, it's another showcase of Team Cherry's bad habits. Also, even if, they explained in detail how they designed it, it still doesn't mean it's good. It just doesn't mean it's good. To me at least. Remember, this is a video based on my first playthrough, not yours. I'm not trying to go into this as critiquing to get people to agree with me. I'm just being truthful to myself, because I'm not gonna lie about something just because either because I didn't enjoy it or I enjoyed it. Alright, it's just stupid to just hide those feelings. Probably the main issue to why I feel Silksong's difficulty is completely unbalanced. I'm gonna be truthful here. I think the Silksong bosses completely suck compared to Hollow Knight roster. Not even compared to Hollow Knight, straight up, I don't like them at all. Besides the one I talked about in full detail, along with Lost Lace and Phantom. Fourth Chorus, Savage Beastfly, Skull Tyrant, Sister Splinter, Morwing, Great Conch Flies, Cygnus and Gron. I completely forgot these two existed, I'm gonna be honest. Grohl the Great, The Unraveled, Chef Lugoli, Kragler, Father of the Flame, Voltworm, Raging Conchfly, Broodmother, Plasmified Zongo, Khan, Nihilith, Pale Stag, Clover Dancers, Pinstress, Gerd the Outcast, Watcher at the Edge, Crawfather, Chakra, Grandmother Silk, and surprisingly to a lot of you, Carmelita are all the bosses I dislike. That is a 32% like rate if I'm being generous. It's 20% excluding the bosses I consider mid, like Moss Mother or Chakra. I'm talking from an actual gameplay perspective when it comes to Silksong's combat, not lore or story elements. The reason why I blame the crest for Silksong's unbalanced difficulty is because they set up how the game is going to be balanced, being your main customization options. Each crest has a unique ability along with different movesets and color tools to go along with them. I like how this is Team Cherry's solution to stray away a bit from Hollow Knight's combat design by giving us more ways to play the game and expanding on it. The issue? Same as the charms and tools. They try to balance them out and create an issue where players are going to use the ones where there's less drawbacks, with some crests being infinitely more better than the other ones. So how the crests are designed is a crest will focus on strengthening one or multiple characteristics in combat while lacking other aspects as a way to balance it out. So take the Reaper crest for example. You get really high silk maintenance and long needle range, but you sacrifice needle attack speed, which could result in less damage output. Silksong has you pick out a crest that is adjacent to your playstyle, and the crests are unique enough to warrant some sort of use from every crest. This also seems to be Silksong's solution to incorporate charms from Hollow Knight into your base moveset. Charms like Quick Flash, Shaman Stone, Grubfly Elegy, Thorns of Agony, Long Nail, Mark of Pride are just a few that exist into the crest system. Basically incorporating useless or crutch charms into the crest system to give more variety for people to use with the tools. On paper, this should be fine. Use the crest that complement more to how you play, and if the downside is too much, use a tool to counteract it or switch to another crest. But a factor I feel Team Cherry forgot is player skill level taking into account. You are undoubtedly going to get better at the game as you progress, and you start seeing how much of a gap there is the crests have. Team Cherry's fix to this is locking behind certain crests behind quests or acts. You can't get a crest like Shaman until Act 3 because the door containing it won't open up till endgame essentially. They basically introduce early game crests, mid game crests, and end game crests. The same philosophy they had with the charms. See the issue? Even though they are designed this way in mind, they aren't treated this way at all. The drawbacks of certain crests are really bad, and other crests don't get this treatment nor have drawbacks remotely close to others. The Engineer crest is the biggest culprit to this issue. This crest allows you to replace your Silk abilities to hold up 3 red tools and allowing for 2 blue and yellow slots. Basically, you sacrifice your Silk ability spots for more red tools, but this isn't the issue. You see, once you use the max amount of red tools in your slot, you have to rest on a bench. The Engineer crest bypasses this issue completely through you binding your masks back. As long as you can maintain Silk and shards, you can keep your red tools runtime infinitely in theory. The only drawback, you lose your Silk ability for an extra red tool slot. This drawback does not warrant the amount of DPS return you get through this crest. You're telling me I can infinitely use Cogfly, Tax, Flint Slate, and Cogwork Wheels, the best red tools debatably, as long as I have the Silk and shards for it. Mind you, this game throws shards at you every chance it gets, so you will not run out as long as you don't use them stupidly. On top of that, you can also get 2 blue and yellow slots. This makes no sense at all when the Shaman crest is the exact opposite to the Engineer crest, but you are only allowed to equip 2 blue tools to the base tool availability with no yellow tools available. How does that make any sense? You're telling me Engineer can equip other colored tools and not Shaman? Do not get me wrong, I'm fine with the drawback Shaman has. It is an amazing crest allowing for Silk ability spam and allows you to equip 2 of the best tools for this build. I'm complaining how along with Shaman only being able to equip 2 blue tools, the other downside is your binding is tied to the ground and you won't recover your mask if you are in the air. Yet, I see the Engineer not getting the same treatment when it comes to the crest drawbacks. You're telling me I have to sacrifice arguably 2 major mechanics to use Shaman, but Engineer gets an equivalent trade and a pogo that slightly sucks. Come on, man. This is why I question Team Cherry's balancing decisions. You have 2 amazing crests, one with little or really no drawbacks, and one with 2 major drawbacks, even though these are really the same crest structurally. Tell me how that makes sense. And it doesn't stop here. The early game crests, specifically the Beast and Reaper crest, are advertised to still be viable, and they still are. You can use them till endgame. Just because you can, doesn't mean you should. The Beast crest's main gimmick is too short. I think the vampirism effect should be extended a lot. The Reaper crest though gets power crept hard by the tools and other crests. You see, it makes sense why they slowed the needle speed for the Reaper, since it can produce a large amount of Silk along with other tools. But what's stopping you from using those tools on other crests? You have tools to increase your Silk count whether indirectly or directly, and the increased Silk count for Reaper is tied to your binding. You can easily lose the effect being hit once, so you still need to be careful and move around properly. If you don't have a Silk increase effect active, you actually don't make as much Silk compared to the other crests with a faster hit nail speed like Wanderer or a fully upgraded Hunter's crest. Yes, if you fully charge your attack, you can get 2 Silk notches instead of 1, but still that doesn't even matter to this point, what I'm trying to say. And also, you're not going to be using charged attacks for Reaper. Actually, you may, depending how you playstyle. I actually use it a lot, but that doesn't matter. So you still need to be careful and move around properly. So as long as you don't have the binding effect, you actually produce less Silk compared to other crests, which is wild since the point of this crest is to produce as much Silk as possible. Though the game still wants you to treat the early game crest as viable when you're actively nerfing yourself. The Hunter's crest doesn't apply to this point because it is the only crest in the game with an upgrade path, which increases damage and gives an extra blue and yellow tool slot for any crest in the game. I believe Team Cherry saw how unfair some of the color coding slots were to certain crests, so this was the solution to give something at least. Honestly, it's kind of lazy. I appreciate the effort, and again, it doesn't fix anything. These just make the strong crest even stronger. You are only providing stronger options for stronger crests. Architect, Wanderer, and Hunter are debatably the top 3 best crests in the game and have the most generous tool slots available, so when you add the extra slot for crest, you give all these crests 3 blue tools and 3 yellow tools essentially, which leaves the other crests in the dark, especially the mid tier and lower tier crests, because their own abilities can't match up with what's going on with the higher tier crests. The other crest I used besides the Reaper crest for my playthrough was the Witch crest, which the community unanimously agrees is the worst crest in the game. It makes me sad because it is true regardless of the positives. It has a really good nail speed and a satisfying moveset behind it, along with 3 blue tool slots, which doesn't make any sense because why does this crest get 3 and not the Shaman? Whatever. Though the reason why people consider this the worst, even though Beast exists, is because its binding ability sucks. You don't heal automatically when binding. Instead, you have to bind close to the enemy and hit the enemy to gain the 3 mask of healing back, It's similar to the beast, but you're kind of like a shotgun and you have to hit all 3 hitboxes interactions to get the full 3. This is easier said than done. If you have actually played Silksong, these enemies don't ever stand still. You have to look 3 seconds into the future to be able to get the full effects, since a lot of the enemies and bosses in particular will try to curve around you whenever they can. Remember, bosses will not wait for you, so a crest like Witch, where the main gimmick holds you still, is a horrendous design principle in a game where you are encouraged to keep moving constantly. Plus, if you miss this attack, you get no masks back. It is a giant risk with little rewards behind it. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea. I had the most fun using the Witch shotgun build with the claw mirrors, and it's my favorite crest in the game. It doesn't excuse how basic an idea it is, with little rewards, which is just doing extra damage to the enemy that any high tier crest can do with their own abilities and still get their full 3 masks back. That one drawback is holding back a potentially S tier crest, yet the "you must hit the enemy" condition is latching onto it like a parasite, preventing it from being better. Ironic. This is the point where I would suggest buffs or nerfs for crests to try to fix the issue, though that will muddle my points a lot. The game is already balanced around the crests, and buffing or nerfing a crest too much can break the difficulty ecosystem this game has going for it. Ideally, I don't want to see nerfs be a solution to fix the higher tier crests. Preferably, I would want to see major buffs come to the weaker crests, like giving Reaper an extra silk ability and removing the red tool slot, since I find it redundant this crest has 2 red tool slots. The Witch crest main gimmick being replaced with something more consistent. An idea I have is to make the tentacles much longer and have it follow the enemy, or buffing the existing ability by giving an enemy a debuff by slowing them down, or being able to deal extra damage using your needle, since I really like the needle combat this crest have. The Beast crest needs a longer duration to its main gimmick, and also grants more damage whenever you activate it, just for a little bit while, because how are you going to have a crest called Beast and not have it do extra damage? It probably does, I probably checked, but if it doesn't, it should. Removing the stupid heavy weight for Shaman crest and giving an extra blue tool slot will help it more. I know this reason is because, you know, the Shaman people have shells, so that's probably holding them down, and that's probably a reference to that, where when you binding, you know, the shell that the Shaman crest has is pulling down, what's it called, a hornet. But still, I just think it's just kind of stupid, to be honest. Or just give the Shaman crest an extra blue tool slot. Again, while I'm not asking for Team Cherry to listen to a nobody YouTuber and input my ideas, even if they wanted to, I don't think they can. We've seen Team Cherry nerf the crest indirectly through the tools or other factors. Threadstorm was nerfed by having the duration be shortened, which is huge because the main issue was it did one-shot every non-boss enemy in the game if you have max needle damage. This only affects Shaman crest. It was a must-have for Shaman, and now it's really underwhelming. You could only do this when you had max needle damage, as well as having the Shaman crest equipped, and you have to get through 2 difficult quests to get them. I don't see why this is an issue when you only reach max needle damage by the end of Act 2, and you don't get the Shaman crest until Act 3. Again, why was this necessary? It was really just a Shaman crest nerf. The only time I've seen Team Cherry nerf a crest directly is actually the Architect crest. The nerf is really underwhelming though. It only nerfs the Silk recharge speed to the charged attack, and every nerf that comes to tools or skills are such a small increment because I feel like Team Cherry can't do much beyond that without breaking certain interactions. I will admit, Team Cherry has done a good job when it comes to buffing items. The Volt Filament was useless until patch 3 or 4, giving the charm a use into the Shaman build. I think this was a good way to counteract the Silkstorm nerf, but again, you can't get this tool until Act 3, so I don't see why Threadstorm needed a nerf. The full build isn't broken until pretty much endgame, though like I said, the reason why Team Cherry won't buff crest directly is because of interaction. Because how would Silksong bosses react to changes where they are already in tune with existing crest balancing? They are at a level on par with the current state for crests, including weaker crests. Silksong bosses are too easy in my opinion, which might sound crazy to some of y'all, though why I say this about Silksong bosses is because how weak half the crests are. They are limiting the true potential to some of the bosses, including Khan, Nihilith, and Carmelita specifically, the community's favorite boss, except mine. These bosses, along with majority in the game, are not challenging. The only bosses I struggled with in this game were Last Judge, Grohl, Trobio 2, and Lost Lace. Every other boss I was able to get within 5 to 7 tries, but most of these tries, including the hard bosses, were because of runbacks. The time between boss runbacks and bosses like Roll and Last Judge made up majority of my time compared if it was just bosses. Take Khan for example. You have to go through 3 lockdowns before unlocking a shortcut and have to face 1 lockdown before reaching Khan each time you die. The 3 lockdowns provided more challenge than Khan himself. Silksong is not shy about its room lockdowns. You even have a mini trial boss fight at the end of High Halls. You could argue it's the same premise for Khan. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Khan as a boss in a vacuum. For Khan being the last 3 bosses before Lace, he sucks. He's not challenging at all, including the other 2. Khan has a very predictable and slow moveset that consists of him summoning these red spiky rock pillars. This is his only moveset in the fight. He summons these pillars in different angles, but the issue is, he's too slow and his telegraphs literally scream at your screen. Phase 2 does speed up the pace and does become a fun rhythm game, but it's over before it starts essentially. His moveset doesn't feel threatening at all when his moveset consists of 4 or 5 different variations to the same attack. Khan doesn't try to do anything creative, he's just hurling pillars for the whole fight and limits himself to 2 pillars at a time. Khan doesn't incite any challenge to any Silksong mechanics, and it's a shame because the Sand of Karnak's whole gimmick is using the same coral Khan uses to maneuver around. I would have loved to see Khan use the coral he summons to limit the arena range and use it to his advantage while limiting the player's mobility, similar to what First Sinner did in her needle moves. Or maybe create the coral balls you pogo off from to keep you on your toes trying to manage Khan and the ground. Though all he does is point his finger in the air and for you to dodge them. That's it. It feels like a lousy reward after clearing a very difficult 3 arena gauntlet. You can argue the arena gauntlets are also part of the boss, but the game builds up Khan so much. It's a dramatic step each time you have to get past the room. Also, the room that you find him in is a long parkour up to get to him. Khan is actively inviting you slowly if you can make it past the rooms, and it ends with a mediocre boss at the end. It's so weird seeing Team Cherry easing up on players here compared to other areas in the game. This is an Act 3 boss, and I expect these bosses to be challenging. The other 2 also follow suit to Khan and his dissatisfactory performance. Nihilith's gimmick is interesting, but there's no actual challenge to it, just stick to the walls and hit her. You can actually get around by using the parry silk skill to stay in the air longer while doing damage. I wish this boss had more aerial focus to it, since it would fit nicely to how the boss restricts your arena movement. Maybe the wind geysers show up, and the entire arena is filled with thorns, so you maybe have to balance yourself as you're dodging Nihilith attacks. Or maybe giving this boss a proper boss phase instead of it being 3 phases of the same thing essentially. Carmelita is probably the most disappointing from the trio. The curiosity with the hunting march area surely scatters in your head when you're playing Silksong. It's one of those areas that lingers in your mind, and ants are the most recognizable bugs in the world, so it's interesting how Silksong handles the ant species. You see some cool details with them. How you have the mini ants crawling on the floor. There's a mission at the lounge in Greymore where you have to head to the basement and the ants are waiting for you. It's funny to see honestly, and the more interesting part about the hunting march is the civil war taking place. Ants as a species are best known for their coordination. They are probably the most coordinated animal group easily without debate. But ants are very discriminatory even against their own species. It is a very strict and disciplinary work social system for them. If you don't bring any value or do your job, that could disrupt the workflow. They don't hesitate to straight up execute their own kind. That's what we're seeing in the hunting march. A lot of the ants have turned against each other. Some ants have a pigmentation on them, and if you notice, the soldier ants with pigmentation are usually by themselves. You can meet a soldier ant you can buy tools in Act 1 and Act 2, but once you get to Act 3, he's killed off. Kinda sad to see because he was hiding trying to survive. The ants with pigmentations are being hunted down by other soldier ants and shows a classism system happening with Carmelita, their queen, being gone. Probably being the driving factor to this unstable system. There's no leader to guide the ants, and they are lost without her. You can tell they are lost by the Carmelita statue in a room, which is your entrance to the boss fight. Now, presentation wise, Carmelita is amazing, no doubt about it. The dancing animation she fuses into her attacks during the boss fights is beautiful from a spectating standpoint, and the atmosphere complements a lot to her queen status. But as a boss, especially when her identity is tied to a race of bugs who excel in combat and being hyped up from the Silksong community, she's just too easy. Easier than I initially anticipated. I was expecting to be stuck here for at least 2 hours upon hearing that Carmelita was the most difficult boss to some people, but she was disappointing. This boss only took me 30 minutes, which speaks volume up until this point in the game. At this point in the game, I was this far into the game, and only a small handful of bosses actually left an impression on me, and even a smaller few, 1 or 2 bosses, actually felt challenging. which Carmelita isn't a part of. It feels like these 3 bosses are missing something to their kit, or maybe multiple things. Khan would benefit having more movesets, Nihilith would benefit from having another phase different from the gimmick she has, or just go full sending with that gimmick and making it harder for the player. And Carmelita would benefit by just being a bit faster to her chains to her movesets like First Sinner and having more health to her. Carmelita animations in between attacks feels natural from an animation standpoint, but it doesn't translate well giving a challenge to the player. The attacks come one at a time, which is off considering how I explained Silksong bosses / enemies don't wait for you to punish. Carmelita is nice enough to wait for you to punish her, which I don't understand. Team Cherry humbled itself to defend its overworld difficulty, but when it comes to its bosses, they're quick to tweak them. During the game's launch, they nerfed Morwing and Sister Splinter. These two, really? The easiest bosses in the game needed nerfs? I question why these 2 bosses even needed nerfs to begin with. Morwing and Sister Splinter certain attacks do 1 mask of damage instead of 2. Why was this necessary? Team Cherry was adamant on Silksong's 2 mask system, and yet they are abandoning it with debatably the one aspect in difficult game design where the game's difficulty should be at their highest with the bosses. It's not even with the harder bosses, it's with 2 fodder bosses you can easily get through without trouble, to be honest, receiving these nerfs. Majority of bosses in this game, especially late game ones, feel more enjoyable to fight at phase 2, yet that enjoyment is quickly gone with the player's high damage count and the boss's low health count. Just as I was starting to enjoy Carmelita with the faster pace, as the moves started to chain together more properly, it was already over. Again, it feels like these bosses should be starting out with phase 2 since the movesets feel complete. I wonder to myself, is this the reason why I enjoyed First Sinner so much, because I managed to face it early? Because it seems that is probably the case the more I think about it. Reaching it normally with a double jump isn't viable, and you are implied to use the Silksong ability. So I wonder to myself, did I luck out reaching First Sinner technically early? Because I know for sure other people probably did the same chest jump I did, and if they did, was it intentional from Team Cherry? Considering their speedrunner track record, I'm willing to bet not. If that's the case, then my match against First Sinner was a mistake. I was at lower nil damage than intended, and that's a shame because I thought I was a really good place in the game to face someone like First Sinner. It's this mistake where now I realize it probably explains why a lot of Silksong bosses feel easy. First Sinner is the only boss until Lost Lace where it felt appropriately paced. The fight felt long, the moveset was all around balanced, and the second phase didn't end quickly. Now at this point in the game, including the early game bosses feel too easy with disappointing movesets and die way too quickly with such a low health bar. It was Carmelita's sudden phase 2 where I realized Silksong has already offered the best of the best in its catalog, which is disappointing. The crest is to blame for this disappointment in my eyes. In Team Cherry's job to balance the crest, the bosses needed to be tweaked around them. I just feel like they went at it the wrong way. In Hollow Knight, they only had to balance around one moveset. It was one, but it allowed for Team Cherry to be creative on how the players could use their abilities to their full potential. In Silksong, there are too many movesets to balance around, so they probably want to avoid bosses having moves catered to one crest more than others. It does seem in some way the bosses are actually catered more towards the weaker crests, since I didn't struggle as much with them when using the Reaper or the Witch crest. Team Cherry is probably aware just how weak certain crests are, which makes me question why they even have some crests be better than the other crests if boss difficulty and quality were going to suffer because of this crest difference. They are limiting boss potentiality, trying to have the weaker crest be viable, yet the answer was simple. Just buff the weaker crest, but like I said, it's probably too late at this point. The bosses are already catered to the strengths of all the crests. You might say, doesn't that mean the crests are balanced? In theory, from a number standpoint, yes, but because the bosses are at the level to complement the weaker crests, the top tier crests are just that much more powerful, which limits the boss even if they're supposed to be at the level of the weaker crest. I still think the bosses are too easy compared to Hollow Knight bosses with the player. It's surprising Team Cherry went this route for a few reasons. They pride themselves in balancing the player, yet the crest and tools have clear level differences. While Team Cherry went full John Kramer with this world, I don't get that energy with the bosses. Lastly, if you have been in this community before Silksong's release, you'll notice what no sequel for multiple years straight does to a community. I'm specifically referring to modding. You have had people create their own DLC mods like the Pale Court mod, which brings new bosses and charms. Then there's the other side of the modding community, creating mods made to torture a human being. To people who play these mods, why? Were y'all that desperate for new content? Completing Path of Pain while being chased by a group of primal aspids? Completing Hollow Knight while being chased by primal aspids? A primal aspid boss in general? In all seriousness, you have had mods transforming Absolute Radiance in whatever the fuck this is. There's a fan-made boss where you have to parry every attack to get a chance to damage the boss. There's mods transferring the whole map into this platformer from hell type of game, which makes Path of Pain look like a joke. You get the idea. I'm convinced some modders for Hollow Knight wake up early in the morning and get up with the sole motivation to create a mod equivalent to a CIA torture method. I know Team Cherry has seen these mods. They're very attuned with the community, so it surprises me Team Cherry really held back the boss difficulty for a lot of Silksong bosses, since the hardcore fanbase for the series have gotten better to the game's mechanic by playing these mods. Almost a week after Silksong's release, you already have people making mods for Silksong, like a harder Carmelita boss fight, or fighting two of the same bosses at the same time. I know people creating mods is normal, especially with the Hollow Knight community. The issue is, you wouldn't really see mods making bosses, or the game harder until like months later of a game's release. Just take Elden Ring Night Rain for example. After its DLC, like there was a lot of content, right? But then after like what, 2 months, 3 months, people started making mods to face other bosses. You have that. Yeah, and then what to call it? The only time we've seen games going crazy with mods is if like a exclusive game like a PS5 game or Xbox game gets put on PC. Then, you know, there's gonna be mods day one. But that's besides the point. But as I said, we started seeing these mods a week/month after Silksong's release. I really wanted to wait a few months after Silksong's release to decide whether the game was difficult or not, because I didn't replay Hollow Knight before Silksong's release and I wanted a fresh slate to Silksong. The conversation about Silksong's difficulty was rampant on the game's release. Team Cherry doubled down on the 2-mask system when people complained about the game's difficulty. They said it was intentional, which now after completing the game, I can see what they were going for. Does that mean it was good? I don't know. I can't tell whether the overall difficulty is well designed or not from a balancing standpoint. The actual platforming is well designed, and this game does have a very unique enemy variety complementing the areas they reside in. Though sometimes the game feels like it's punishing you for the sake of punishing you unfairly. This is where difficulty comes from at times when it shouldn't. It could be a case with Team Cherry enjoying fucking with the player base, yet I'm not sure that's the case at times. The maggot waters in Biowater feels really bipolar to this philosophy. I see the idea. Have it be annoying con to the player if the player dares to interact with it. Yet at times, it feels like Team Cherry uses the maggot water to create artificial difficulty in certain areas. The run back to Grohl is the best example. Besides the fact that the bench you'll be using for this area and the Grohl room are at the opposite ends of each other, as well as the enemies here being the most annoying fucks I ever met, you are playing the floor is lava with the maggot water each time you run back, which is in place unnecessary stress to your run back. The maggot water causes just enough drawbacks that it could determine whether to go back to the bench or not. It's not fun having your binding being blocked as well as your soak slowly going down already, but each time you do this run back, you have to remember the maggot water acting as a debuff to you entering the boss fight. So you're trying to be extra careful not to fall in, knowing it can determine a make or break each time you face Grohl. The water may be annoying. I'll admit, this argument is only tied to this run back, so I'm not going to hold it against Team Cherry entirely. Biowater is going to be a love and hate relationship to a lot of players. You see what I'm trying to argue though. Decisions to certain overall platforming or game design choices are really just odd in this game. Just because it's intentional from Team Cherry doesn't mean it's good, and I hate how that is a shield towards actual criticism at times. Just because Team Cherry said Silksong feels harder because it's in lore, doesn't mean 90% of bugs should be doing 2 masks of damage. It's annoying. Why does this small weaver bug I find in the crevice of areas do damage comparable to bosses in this game and fucking absolute radiance? Why even give almost every enemy in this game a 2 mask damage attack? To create difficulty? It doesn't feel authentic at times. The deep dock bugs who throw explosions at you turn into an IDF soldier locking onto a Palestinian kid when they smell you being in the same presence as you. Sometimes the game would just throw a small army at you, determined to get you no matter what. Their attacks do 2 masks of damage, by the way. I've never seen such a dedicated bug in this game as these, because they will never leave you until you're back at the bench. I don't mind bosses or large bugs having 2 mass damage attacks because it's what I expect. Yet whenever 80 through 90% are doing comparable damage, the difficulty feels muddled, and the bosses take a tank in quality since it takes away a special attribute they had in Hollow Knight, knowing some weak bugs can match their damage. Their comment about Silksong and difficulty being tied together in lore also doesn't make sense with the bosses with what I brought up earlier. They say this, yet I feel like I was mowing through the boss roster. The only boss that gave me a challenge comparable to the Hollow Knight ones was Lost Lace. We'll cover her later, but it's ridiculous the game's overall difficulty feels so automated at times, while the bosses feel underwhelming throughout the entirety of Silksong. Team Cherry's game philosophy feels counterintuitive. They say this is how we design our game, and then do the opposite at times. The overall game difficulty might be aligned to their comment, though I question it at times when it takes their 1000th boulder trick inside a narrow platforming section to finally get me. Yes, Team Cherry, you managed to get me with this stupid trick after 30 hours. Yes, the boulder trick you spam for the entirety of the game finally caught me. The trick was clever the first time, but like any repeating joke, it gets tiring quick. Sometimes certain gameplay stuff in this game gets tiring. I love the mini gauntlets in the high halls. It is hands down the best lockdown this game had and was one of my favorite moments during Act 2, though the game just spams these rooms so much that it gets tiring. Yes, Silksong, keep spamming these rooms because I love them. But the one thing that pisses me off the most in this game is how much Silksong tries to sell you a solution to the problem they created. Back to the maggot water. Is the maggot water annoying you? Use Wrath of Purity and you find it at the end of bio water. It also breaks as well, by the way. Having trouble with the lava? Use Magma Bill. It's only useful here though. Certain tools cover niche scenarios meant as a solution to annoying mechanics, but most likely you wouldn't have the space for them, so Silksong introduced another solution for the solution to the problem they created. Why couldn't these be permanent upgrades? Ismateer and Hollow Knight work this way. The acid water restricted the player the same way the lava and magma water did. It is a permanent upgrade, and I wonder if the acid water was in Silksong, would they make Ismateer a tool instead? It's just a case of Team Cherry creating complicated upgrades and making restrictions where they shouldn't. For Christ's sake, the cloak exists in this game to counteract the frost effect and it isn't a charm. The Wrath of Purity and Magma Bill should have been permanent upgrades to begin with. I'm gonna level with y'all here. This section feels a lot like ranting, and that's partially the goal. I hate getting hyper analytic. Okay, I'm lying. I love getting analytic for the sake of ranting. I thrive on it. I glaze what I love and slander on what I don't. Silksong was a roller coaster for me. Act 1 was just very slow build up the entire time, failing to catch my interest. Act 2 had me hooked beginning to end, and Act 3 started off strong, but after a while, just felt miserable to get through. I just wanted to get through the game already at some point during Act 3. I don't know when though, and maybe that isn't the case for you watching this video. Expectations and enjoyment varies person to person. I created this video based on my first playthrough of Silksong through my perspective and with a specific thought process. To be honest with my feelings about the game. You see, bias is inevitable when you talk about a subject. Your viewpoint really shapes the structural blueprint to the media you are covering. People will always try to cover something without bias, unless the subject relates to something literal to another subject, like scientific research, math, or statistics where you can't really have your beliefs affect those subjects no matter what you argue. Some bias is going to bleed into your view whether you choose to or not. It's just a bit frustrating when people really deny having their bias not take some effect into their own review of a media. We as people can't really ignore medias that tend to cater to things we enjoy already. When we already enjoy something, we try to find more medias to build upon our dopamine enjoyment. The only time you can argue you can't have bias on something is if you are new to the genre of media you're covering, but even that's debatable since similarities between medias are going to exist whether small or not, and your personal enjoyment of the things you like already will affect your personal enjoyment to a new wave of media you are trying to consume. It's like saying you're someone who listens to any genre of music, yet you have your favorites and you tend to ignore other genres or don't listen to other genres. I say this because when I'm covering something for my videos, I want to give you a perspective on how I view it and how I enjoy it. I personally think it's bad to try to view something with an ignorance on your own personal enjoyment, because even putting it on the side is in some way a reflection to how you truly feel about the subject and hidden anatomy. I made it clear in the beginning of this video that I am reviewing Silksong based on my enjoyment and my viewpoint. Anything hyper analytic or statistical wise is to support my own personal argument to what I'm trying to convey to you. I am basically trying to explain my thought process to get you, the viewer, to understand it through my lens. Whether you think I did a good job is up to you. If I did, then I succeeded in my purpose for this video. If I didn't, I like to ask you, do I need to explain it further? If so, just drop a comment and I'll explain it more to your specific concern about this video. Or do you not understand due to just overall not agreeing with me from your own gameplay? See, maybe the things I have issues with Silksong don't matter to you. You might even like it or prefer the alternative changes Silksong used from Hollow Knight. I'm not here to take away how you feel about the game. People are really easily influenced when watching this sort of content. Sometimes myself as well, but I intentionally have been avoiding any reviews or video essays for my content because I want to give you my perspective on things I'm passionate about, including Silksong. I love Hollow Knight to death. It is in my top 5 games of all time purely because of my first playthrough. Nothing will ever replicate coming across City of Tears for the first time, or the gruesome climb Path of Pain offered, or the jaw-dropping Nightmare Grim fight offered me. And maybe I expected too much from Silksong to replicate that wonder in its own game. But Silksong is still my game of the year for 2025. I made this video to show my love for Silksong and Hollow Knight because Silksong's release is a moment of celebration for the gaming community. Team Cherry released Hollow Knight, changing how indie games are viewed now. Passion will never go unnoticed, and while it did take the gaming sphere some time to notice it, we've reached a point since 2022 that we should be uplifting games who have cared put into them, and 2025 was such a big milestone to this. The Game Awards were filled with games made from indie developers, a first for gaming. The AAA companies lost to smaller teams with smaller budgets, yet with bigger hearts for their projects. Silksong's release joined in at the perfect time. I would say it joined at the forefront for this passion phenomenon happening during 2025. 7 years since its reveal, and 7 years of waiting. Was it worth it? It was. Silksong's release was completely worth the wait. Everyone wanted this game to succeed, and it did. With the $20 price tag, Team Cherry made sure no one was excluded for this grand release. Team Cherry deserves the success Silksong brought them, no doubt about it. Even though the bosses feel lackluster, the difficulty is everywhere, the tool system being a disappointment in my eyes, and the game started off really weak, there's still a lot to love about this game. The music is phenomenal and shows how much care Team Cherry puts in the small stuff. There's a lot of lore built from Hollow Knight, which I want to see the most. The platforming having the biggest upgrade in my eyes with how much the game pushes the player with their platforming skills, and us having more direct storyline with Hornet as a character. In a year where feminine representation shined in 2025 through gaming, Hornet was my favorite because we see the maturity at play in the game's story. Hornet acts like she doesn't care, nor is interested in helping Farloom, yet her action says otherwise. She is a guardian acting as a mother to Farloom when the civilization needs it the most. Her actions are really the opposite to what she states. It's because of her, Chakra's able to change and be a protector, a direct reflection from a younger Hornet in Hollow Knight changing to someone new, not tied to the status quo. Sherma is able to understand real change come from actions, seeing Hornet rescue him, but it's okay to use your optimism to fuel the change you want to see. First Sinner can rest knowing Hornet can help Farloom, and we see Hornet's backstory being the biggest reveal in Silksong, with the implication of upgrades in Silksong having remnants of other bugs fused into Hornet along her journey. Hornet is able to maintain herself and understand who she truly is. Her 3 mothers reflect herself to who she is, and she doesn't forget that upon collecting the pale flower needed to reach Lost Lace, the last person she ends up saving, knowing how they are related to each other. There's a lot to love about Silksong, so I hope I ended up doing a good job showing my appreciation for what Silksong did right. I also have hope in Team Cherry improving upon the changes I want to see improved. With the DLC coming this year, they can take a book from Shadow of the Erd Tree in Elden Ring where they can give buffs to Crest exclusive to the Sea of Sorrow DLC. I also want to see better tools being introduced to the blue and yellow sections, or upgrades to the tools allowing for less restrictiveness to certain builds. Maybe removing the double damage from the wire bracelet, or actually granting 50% damage up would be nice. But I won't tell Team Cherry how to create their game. I want to see their original vision be the focus and not mine. I won't ever put that type of pressure on anyone or anything. Team Cherry does a lot right, and I wanted to play into their strengths. So to anyone watching this video who hasn't played Silksong, go play it. It's worth your $20. Or wait till it goes on discount for like $5. It's your call.